Welcome back to the Perfect Lap Podcast. I'm Mark Jager. This is Mark Kilgore. He goes by Kilgore. I go by Jager. And today we have Jonathan Benson of Tyre Reviews. I don't know about you guys, but me and Kilgore were ecstatic to get him on here to share his tire knowledge with the Time Attack community and discuss one of the most interesting and, better yet, most contested topics in Time Attack, which is, of course, which is the best tire? And obviously we'll be discussing which best tire would it be for whether it be you're in a 200 treadwear category, a 200 plus treadwear category, maybe you're in a 60 to 100 category, or unlimited. We're going to give you all the lowdown here on this podcast. So stick around, buckle up. It's going to be a good one. All right. Jonathan, you're on the hot seat, my man. You're here to educate us. Help us learn about tires. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's your day going?
Yeah, good, thank you. Busy as always. I was just thinking during your intro, I hope by the end of the podcast, anyone that listens is actually more or less confused than more confused, because the tires, I found the more you talk about them, the less you know, like legitimately. So hopefully it'll go well, but we'll see. They're confusing things.
Well, I will say this. I've watched a ton of your videos online, obviously. And if you guys don't know, go onto YouTube right now. Tyre Reviews. He has a website as well, tyrereviews.com.
With a Y.
With a Y. With a Y. So it's tire spelled the correct way, Jonathan?
I prefer TI. I prefer the American version, if I'm honest. It would have made my life easier if everyone was the same spelling, that's for sure.
But you have an option. Go on there, check that thing out. He's got a ton of information, deltas, datas. Like, one thing I absolutely love and adore about everything that you do on this isn't just I threw on a tire and I go get an impression. Like, the amount of data collected, and I love how you present it. You put it out there for us. You post it on your website. I mean, literally, I'm on the website right now, and I can literally go to track day tires, competition tire sets, and I can break it down by that. You don't make it hard to find the information, which I'm gonna tell you right now, a lot of people want you to, go look at all of their content. So it really makes it difficult. So I really, really appreciate all of that. Now, I kind of want to let's start off on this, right? I usually try to go into a little bit about how the hell did you get into this position of being this guy that gets to throw on all these sets of tires and gets to tell us about them.
I will condense quite a long, boring story into small snippets. My first car in the UK when I started to drive was an MG ZR. I don't think you ever got the MG Rover brand here. A little hot hatch, like a Civic Type R, but really cheap and bad. But it came with a set of Michelin Pilot Sport tires on the original directional. Burnt them off, or the front tires, in 4,000 or 5,000 miles, as you do being young and stupid. Did a couple of track days. Went to a tire garage and asked for the same. They were like, "Do you want Michelin's on again?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know anything about tires, but they were great." So they put on a set of Michelin Pilot Exalto PE2s, unbeknown to me, which is their sort of sport touring tire rather than ultra high performance. I remember coming out the garage, turning and being like, "Oh, that's different. That's like really different. Like how, what?" And then this was, early 2000s. So mine was blue, but it had those 17-inch alloys, like 225, 45, 17, and that was wildly big for 2002.
Yeah. I had to look one of these up because I had no idea what you were talking about. So for our viewing audience on YouTube, you can check out a MG Rover. I guess the ZR was the sport version.
Yeah, a sport version of the Rover 200.
Okay.
It had 105 horsepower. That tells you everything.
I don't even know how, Jager, how would you try and tell someone like here's a similar car in the US?
I think he nailed it. I think he nailed it with you're talking about, I mean, you might even go as far as Geo Metro, but I mean, I like the Honda Civic. I think that's
Civic
good enough.
hatchback. Yeah. Civic hatchback. All right. Yeah. There you go. All right, cool.
Okay. Moving on with the story. Then this was start of the internet. I was a computer geek, still am a computer geek, doing computing at college. And then I looked online for information about tires, and there wasn't any. So I thought, I know, a fun little side project, build a website about tires. I was doing a lot of track days, so hopefully tire companies will send me tires if I've got a semi-popular website. And from I think 2004 onwards, it was just like a side hustle, and like a full-time side hustle in the evenings. But I built up a website. I was lucky to start doing this in Europe, because European tire companies, although we have Michelin US and Michelin EU, they are very different companies, and they're set up to deal with press and people like me very differently. So Europe has had a long-standing tradition of independent tire tests. But they're supported by the tire manufacturers, because to do a proper like road test, maybe not track stuff, but to do a road test, you need wet grip tracks, you need wet grip braking lanes, you need hydroplaning lanes, you need rolling resistance machines. So it's outside of the scope of like a car and driver magazine to do on their own. So the tire companies always supported that in Europe. And I was lucky enough to be part of that sort of magazine independent tire tester team out there. I was lucky enough to train with the best tire companies in the world and the head test drivers from all of them. So that's how I sort of was lucky enough to develop my skills. And then it's just sort of progressed from there. Started YouTube in 2016, 2017. I really did not want to be a YouTuber. I still do not want to be a YouTuber, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't like being on camera. I don't like talking that much. Sorry. And like, I know I'm on a podcast, but it's not my favorite thing to do, talking. I like educating people on tires though. So YouTube and things like this help people understand the very ununderstandable products that are car tires.
Oh God, yes. I mean, I very much appreciate the construct. Like you said, you don't necessarily like to be in front of the camera or like to talk, but at the same time, having the enjoyment of being able to pass knowledge is something that far exceeds your comfort level.
Yeah, exactly.
How you present, again, I can't stress it enough, how you present the data, the information, like, again, I'm going to stress it, going to the website and looking at this, like, again, this isn't presented as a YouTuber or as a, like, I'm just here, because probably a lot of people are going to say, well, Michelin probably gives him, free stuff or gives him a bunch of money to make their tires the best, da 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 da. That is not how this is presented at all.
Yeah, transparency has always been the core thing for Tyre Reviews, because like you say, it would be very easy to take a bunch of money underhand and all of a sudden this tire's the best tire in existence. So again, this more applies to like street tires. The way you judge a test overall is you have to work out a ranking system, right? A tire might be really good in wet, average in dry, have terrible rolling resistance, but might be quite good in comfort. And it's like, what priority do you put on those scores to come to an overall conclusion about what tire is best? And obviously the best tire for you is probably different to the best tire for me, depending on, I live in Utah, Salt Lake City. I think you're in California where it's nice and sunny. So we have different requirements. So it was very important early on to have a really public and transparent scoring system that I couldn't sway, that people could go on the website and adjust themselves. So if they had I want a tire that's really good in the dry and I don't care about the wet, they can change it and see the data on that. And then coming soon actually on the website there's going to be even more transparency, because I'm going to start publishing like all the underneath data. So like for braking tests, we do 7 to 10 braking runs and then delete the outliers. Like the best and the worst usually get deleted, then average the best. So I'm going to start presenting that data too, just for like absolute full transparency. And yeah, sadly, it would be more profitable I don't earn a lot of money doing what I do, and it would be certainly nice to take money off the tire companies, but that's been another thing I've strictly avoided. I've never taken money to make a video or perform a test.
Oh wow.
So that's why
cool.
I'm poor, but at least I feel good in myself. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned you've mentioned a couple times now, which I think is incredibly important. But you said part of when you were getting into this, you had the opportunity to work with some of the engineers, some of the testing groups. I have to imagine that you always do as robust as you can of testing procedures, processes.
Yeah.
You obviously understand pretty well, like what the caveats are, right? Like I can't control for this, but I'm trying to control for as many things as I can. I assume a lot of that stuff probably came from your time with those engineers and everything.
Yeah.
So what were some of the major things, especially related to tire testing? We usually just think of these things as they're all the same. They're made out of rubber. They go on wheels, right? Like how much do you really have to control for? But obviously, different cars, the surface temperatures, air temperature, all those sort of things. But like, what were some of the big things that you learned working with those engineers in terms of doing tire testing?
Yeah, I think there's two big factors, and that's surface conditions and temperature are two of the biggest factors you can try and control for. Like I say, we try. Like there's some fairly standardized things we do in tire testing for. So let's take wet braking as an example. If you're doing a 10 set test in wet braking, you're braking each tire around 10 times, but you also have control tires. So you'll do, like, say, a control tire set 1. So you'll do a braking run on set 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you'll do another control run, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 control run, 9, 10 control run. And then you plot the standard deviation of the averages of the controls, and then you can tell what the temperature or the surface conditions have done. And then you can calculate back to like an even point for all tires, because especially like if you're doing a big tire test, like you can be doing braking for 4 or 5 hours. It's not a lot of fun, but you can't control the weather. So the sun's coming out, the track temperature, the surface temperature is increasing, the water temperature is increasing. So we do try and control for that very heavily. And then I think one of the things that makes me chuckle about more complicated tests like snow testing is people are like, oh, just put some time, go and do this test. Like, you're in Utah, go find a snowy car park and do it in that. Like when the snow tracks that we test, and I realize this is slightly away from time attack, but I think it's interesting. The snow surfaces we test, they take weeks, if not over a month, to prepare. So you're building up a really solid base layer of almost like ice that you're padding down every day. And then when you're testing, you have the circuit prepared in the morning. You then go do set 1. And then when you're in getting your wheels changed, you've got this really expensive, massive, complicated machine going around the track a number of times just to regrade the surface so every tire is getting the same conditions over and over. And then you're still doing a control run every 3 or 4 times because you're not doing it perfectly. So there is some evolution, especially with sun coming out and stuff like that. So you're going through all of this, and then people are shouting at you because you're only managing to do 2 or 3 winter tests a year, and they're referencing some guy on YouTube who's driven he's driven his worn set of A tires in a snowy car park 1 year, and then a year later a brand new set of a different tire in the same snowy car park but in completely different conditions, and then that's their data point for which tire is better. I'm like, you could manipulate that or to be absolutely anything. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, proper tire testing is impossibly expensive and complicated. But I'm lucky I have the support of the tire industry to do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like the time attack stuff, like, let me rewind a little bit. Like, I'm in Utah, Salt Lake City. I don't know if you know what's now called Burt's Brothers Motor Park, but it was Utah Motorsport Campus. Before that, it was Miller. So I have a garage there with a F80 M3, and that's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man knows what's up.
That's a lot easier to control for just during dry testing. Obviously, surface temperature has a huge impact, but I try and only do 3 or 4 set tests, and then you do 1 tire at the start, and a new set, so like I wouldn't say new, like a bedded in set of like a 200, but then you have a second set at the end, so you can like pigeonhole the surface evolution throughout the day, because you know what it's like if you rent a track, you're cleaning it up maybe for the first like 30 minutes, cleaning up the line if it's not been used for a few days, and then the sun comes out and the track temperature goes up by 15, 20 Fahrenheit, and all of a sudden you've got, I don't know, X% less grip. So yeah, it's you really have to control the tire conditions, and then you have to try and the stuff you can't control, like the weather, you have to try your very best to calculate. Is it perfect? No, it's not. But is it the best we can do within reasonable bounds of affordability and time? I think so. If anyone knows any better way of doing it, I'm always open to like changing my methodology, because I just want to be the best I possibly can.
Sure. You mentioned temperature and surface conditions as being the biggest ones. I imagine that you spend a lot of time prepping and planning these tests. Sort of what's your process for that? And I mean, do you even plan certain tests around certain times of the year? Obviously, snow testing you're not going to be doing in the middle of the summer, but just to try and get right. Like I think about Jager in SoCal, where sunny days in the summer, you may have mild conditions in the morning, but the temperature ramps up so quickly that it'll really get away from you versus maybe there's some times a year where you have a little bit more stable temperature throughout the day. So do you kind of try and really hit those times of the seasons hard? Just what's sort of your process in terms of those things?
Yeah, it's certainly more of a thing now. I live in Salt Lake City compared to Europe, especially the UK. You kind of got the average grey weather 90% of the year, and you don't get these big swings in temperature. Whereas now I live at 42,000 feet, 4,200 feet, sorry. And you really do have cold mornings, and then by lunchtime you've got a really big swing in temperature. Also, you've probably experienced with your F82, like if you're doing hard laps and it's over 100 degrees ambient, your car's going to derate like 2 or 3 laps. So yeah, it's something I'm not perfect at yet. I'm learning. There is obviously times where I've aimed to, like, I know the day's going to be really hot, so I'll book the track slot from 6 a.m. and try and get it done before the temperature swings if it's going to be a really hot day. In the spring and fall, I can certainly start aiming for like a late afternoon slot where I know the sun will have been out all day. The track, hopefully the surface of the track will be relatively heat soaked, so I won't be taking any more temperature on. And that's always a good option as long as ambient isn't too high. And then on your note about winter testing in summer, you can actually go to New Zealand and do snow testing in summer. It's just really, really expensive. Yeah. So
That's awesome. Yeah. Noted.
yeah, Utah's a challenge. It has been an interesting learning experience, I should say.
So I have to ask this. So coming from the SoCal aspect and the desert, where you can start the day off and it'll be 60 degrees, and then by lunchtime it's now 95 degrees. When you look at those temperature swings like that, and you're talking about tires, what's the thing that like jumps out at you right from there that you're like the level of performance that you're gonna lose from like a 30-40 degree temperature swing? From your experience, what's that really look like?
Stress, sadness, frustration. I don't have a good answer. And the frustrating thing as well is if I'm testing with a big temperature swing, like maybe a 40-50 degree predicted temperature swing, I just wouldn't test, or I'd load it late in the day, like I say, when the track's a bit hotter. But the frustrating thing about doing tests in those kind of difficult conditions is like I've got an F80 M3. It's relatively standard, so it's relatively, I think, 3,600 pound wet. My driving style is particularly aggressive, so I know if it's 50-60 degrees ambient, I can still easily get enough temperature in almost any 200 tire. But someone on a light Lotus with maybe less horsepower and a more moderate driving style might have a completely different experience with the same sets of tires just because of their vehicle and their driving style. So I think one of the things that I've tried to do with the site and everything I do is like, don't take me as like the Bible, because I'm not. I am the Bible for that day on that vehicle with my driving style. And that's all I am. Like what people should be doing is looking at similar people, similar cars, similar circuits, similar ambient. And what I've tried to do on the website is collate all the information online, all the good information online. So like Tyre Rack in terms of American market.
None.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you've got, I think Andy, Grassroots Motorsport does an excellent job. He's got a very light vehicle. Tyre Rack is starting to do some really good tests now. They've bought an M2. They're doing some big group tests. So they've got their own unique way of doing things. They've got their own, like their little circuits and a proper street course. And then there's, I think, Car and Driver, maybe not so much recently. So for the US market, the data is a little bit limited in this category, but I'm doing my best to collate it. So it's like the monkeys and typewriters things. Like give enough monkeys a typewriter and you get an average of something good, hopefully. But yeah, I'm certainly in no way saying what I'm saying is correct. We spoke a bit earlier, which I'm sure we'll touch upon. I've had really bad experiences with the Fiat P1. I've tested it twice, but I know 90% of people on Facebook because I'm part of that group, and I know Dallas, and I know that scene, and most people really love that tire. And every time I've driven it, I'm like, that's not the tire for me. But I know some people are having really good experiences with it. So there's some spread in what's good for who. For sure.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. You mentioned Tyre Rack doing some of their own testing. it was really interesting just from your perspective, or just from what you're saying, because you look at sort of Andy's, which I think a lot of people, give Andy. He's been doing this for a long time. He's got a lot of feel and skill in how a tire reacts, what it needs, what it wants, etc. And so I think he has a lot of, street credit when he says, this is what it does, that a lot of people say, okay, but he's also, again, like you, he's well aware of the caveats, and he always tries to be very transparent and what they did, how they did it, what the process was. But it's just interesting to see, he runs a set, you run a set, Tire Rack runs a set, and y'all can, all three of you may come up with slightly different conclusions, at least based on the day, etc. And like, I think that people are becoming more aware of how that all plays into it, and that you guys, right, it's sort of, you guys provide some information, but ultimately, if I'm a time attacker, and I know it's difficult, and sometimes you don't have the budget, but if you do have the budget, you you've really got to test your own car at a specific track on a day, right? Like you can maybe use your information or Tire Rack and say, okay, it seems to be. I think you can make some generalizations that the Vtors, the Bridgestones, the AO52s, maybe the Nankang CRSs, they're falling out of favor a little bit. A lot of people still like the Falcon RT660 pluses, but you can maybe say, okay, this also comes down to tire sizes, right? You may only be able to run a certain size, so that's all you're going to be. That's all you're going to do. But if there's two tires, you're like, all right, I'm going to test these two tires on my car, and even then, I've seen where people, especially for the Vtors, can be very track surface dependent. They like some surfaces better than others, but sometimes you just have to kind of test what you can, make an educated guess, and that's what you're going to go with in terms of competition. But it's just so interesting. To your point, all three of you can come up with different conclusions, but that doesn't mean any one is right or wrong. It just sort of is something. As a consumer, you say, okay, here are three groups. They're all doing pretty good testing, and I'm going to see what I can figure out based off their testing.
Yeah, I think that's a logical way. And also, I would add in like the paddock whispering, like the collective of the people you're racing against at a time attack weekend, the collective knowledge. Like some of it might be down based on marketing or what the next guy said without their own testing. But I think a lot of these guys have probably done a good job of drilling in, especially the fast guys, to what they really like. And like the list of tires you provided, I would probably chuck in the Hoosier Track Attack Pro. It's like a very fast 1-lap tire. It does have the advantage of lower starting tread depth, which is kind of cheating. And then something like, and it's interesting, you mentioned the CRS falling out of favor. Like for me, the CRS is falling into favor because it's one of the few tires that exists that I can do more than 3 push laps on before the tires fall off a cliff, and is relatively competitively fast. Like you've got like the Continental Extreme Contact Force, which I can do 100 laps on at the same time effectively, but they're slow laps, and like everyone knows it's a slow tire. Like a good beginner tire, because you're not guessing. Like, have I lost 2 seconds a lap because of the tire, or is it my driving, or is it the car? If you're new to driving, that can be really frustrating and complicated. But yeah, I personally, I think the CRS is a great tire, but like I do more laps rather than time attack. If I was time attacking, I would, it would be an interesting study on where to do it. I have actually dreamed of doing a time attack. I was hoping when I moved out here, there was one near me, but that hasn't materialized, sadly. But I'm not that far away from you guys, and I'm building my M3 into something like you had as your M4, so maybe you'll see me in your paddock one day.
Absolutely. Hope so.
I mean, we have talked to abundance of organizers that they always whisper the construct of going to Utah. It's just,
please.
It's just always one of those things of like just trying to find that moment to get there. So I'm gonna pause here for a quick second and say, so I don't want to spend an abundance of time in the over 200 treadwear category because I think that's a very minimal group. But give us like a top 3. Like if you were going, and I want to say a top 2 on 2 different levels, right? And I say that because, like you just mentioned, I'm a guy that wants to get into time attack. I need to go to the track and I need to run a bunch of laps so that I can learn how to drive better. I don't want to spend an absorbent amount of money, but I want a tire that can go to the track, have a good time, and I can put down decent laps. Give me like 2 tires that kind of fit that mold, and then 2 tires that fit the mold of like, okay, I learned how to drive. What's the tire that's this is actually going to put down a decent lap time in the 220 plus category?
I wish I had a good answer for you, but I'm afraid I don't. My testing is like 200 and faster, and then 300 and below. So I guess 300 are street tires, right?
Yeah.
So this kind of like awkward 200 to 300 window is relatively unknown to me. The one that sticks out in my head, I believe the Goodyear Eagle Supercar 3 is a 220.
Okay.
Yep.
I believe. And that is a subjectively beautiful tire. And I'm assuming it's a fairly quick tire. But anything else in that segment, I'm afraid I would have to defer to your better knowledge, just because I haven't tested it.
What about like a difference? And I think you've actually looked at this, maybe like a Pilot Sport Cup 2,
Yeah.
which I think is a 240 versus like a 2R, which I think is under 200.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Sport Cup 2, the more street version?
Well, Michelin are a great tire manufacturer, and the Cup 2 240 or Cup 2 Connect or whatever they bill it over here is a great streetable track tire. My history with it's been fine, but thermally and on track wear have not been up to the standard I would want to recommend people. I can burn through a set in fairly low number of corners, let alone laps. If you try really hard on a heavy car, yeah. But it's a good it's a good one tire fits all if you're living in California and you don't want to be swapping wheels. Yeah, and against the Cup 2R, like we all know, the Cup 2R was designed effectively to set at one lap of the Nürburgring, right? It was a Porsche 911 GT3 RS tire. Obviously, there's diminishing returns with what Porsche can do with the 3RS. Although you say that with the 3RS every year, you're like, how can they make it any faster? And then they introduce Active Aero or something ridiculous, and it gets faster. So they have a plan. But at that period, I guess development was stagnating a bit. So they just wanted a one tire that will set a colossal lap time. And that's where the Cup 2R was born from. And the issue with recommending the Cup 2R and even the Cup 2 in certain sizes or certain segments is the Cup 2R, I think, only has one non-OE size. So that means every version of the Cup 2R you can buy, I might be wrong on this, is going to be tuned somewhat for an OE. And it can be quite a lot of tuning. So that means going back to the F platform, I don't know how much you know about the street tires for the F series. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. So the F series was sold with a Michelin Pilot Supersport, which is a 255 3519 front and a 275 3519 rear. Now, when Michelin released the Pilot Sport 4S, they released star versions of the Pilot Sport 4S. So the replacement of the Pilot Supersport is the 4S, and the star version means it's BMW homologated. So the purists, they were like, oh great, I can see the 255 front and the 275 rear sizes I need for my F80 M3. Brilliant, that I will buy them and upgrade. The tires they're actually buying is the front size, the 255 3519. The OE tire in the Pilot Sport 4S is a rear tire off a 3 Series sedan. So not spicy at all. So then they're putting a non-spicy tuned Pilot Sport 4S on the front axle, which should be on a rear axle of a sedan. And then the rear tire, the 275 3519, is the front axle of the G80 M3, I believe. So then putting a front tuned tire on the rear axle of their F series. So you can see when you're starting to look at tires that come with OE certification, it's a real issue that the information out there isn't super clear. And that's where the Cup 2R can be troublesome. Like if you have like a G Series M3 that has a Cup 2R from factory option, great. Like stick it on and you'll go really fast, like probably 2-3 seconds a lap on an average 1.5 2-minute lap than a Cup 2R. But you are paying obviously with the higher cost per mile of use Cup 2Rs.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I was watching one of your episodes recently, and you were talking. I think you were talking about the Cup 2R, and you were comparing it to maybe the Track Attack Pro and something else.
Yep.
But you were talking. You mentioned a lot about how the Cup 2R is the OE tire, and how it's tuned very heavily for that car. But I was wondering, I mean, what goes into that? And you've mentioned it now a couple times. Like, can you kind of hit on that a little bit in terms of
Yeah.
and how much should people really care about that versus, and I guess sort of, again, that as an OE tire, right, that you could maybe take to the track as a, it could handle the track okay versus what I guess you could say an aftermarket manufacturer, even though Bridgestone, right, is but like an aftermarket tire such as an RE71 RS or the V-Tours or, Yokohama, right? They're making tires specifically for track. Maybe kind of compare and contrast those a little bit, but specifically, I'd kind of want to know a little bit more about this OE development that they do.
Yeah, I mean, in the simplest form, a vehicle manufacturer works with a tire manufacturer to tune the tire during the development loop. So Porsche are probably the best example of it. A lot of people think OE tires are it's just a way of sending more tires, a more expensive tire, and through the retail network of the vehicle manufacturer. Although you can buy them aftermarket, no problem. Generally, so 991.2911 to 992. So after the 991.2 is released by Porsche, they'll start working on the 992. And this is probably like 2 or 3 years before it's released. So the tire manufacturer will work a lot. So someone like Michelin, who provide a lot of tires for Porsche, they work alongside Porsche during the development of the car to make the tire work with the car and Porsche's vision for how the balance and the performance of the car is. So it starts off with Porsche in particular. They have to buy it's quite funny. They have to buy a 991.2 from Porsche. Michelin, as the company, would have to buy a car. They then send it. So they've paid the money for the car. They then send it to Porsche and have to pay to get it modified into a test mule for what Porsche believe or plan the weight balance and power distribution, everything for the next generation will be. They then get it back. They then do years of testing on it, and then they have to scrap it at the end. So they can't even sell it because obviously it's a test mule. So it's quite an expensive project for both manufacturers. And then during the development of the vehicle, you'll have a Porsche and Michelin testing together at various circuits around Europe. Porsche will go to Michelin's proving ground in Clermont-Ferrand in the center of France, and they do these loops of development. So Porsche will say, we want this wet grip, this dry grip, we want this kind of front rear balance, this steering reaction, this lane change stability. And then Michelin will go in simulation and do a bunch of sim, and then they'll make some prototype tires, and then the Michelin test drivers will use the test mule to see which of the best ones they want to submit or which patterns. So they'll make 5 or 6 types of tire. They'll then submit it to Porsche, and Porsche will be like, yeah, we like this one, or we didn't like this one. This needs to do better here. And then they'll go into another loop and do it all again. So they can spend, for things like the 3RS, where they're really focusing on like the perfect driving machine, they can spend years and years, make hundreds of prototype tires, if not thousands, and spend probably over $1 million to get the tire like really tuned in for the car. So it can make a difference in terms of the BMW Cup 2R, like that BMW will want that vehicle to be drivable by the widest amount of skill sets possible. So that means they'll have tuned that Cup 2R, that front rear balance of the car, to be like understeer primary. The OE BMW Cup 2R might be slightly better in the wet than maybe like an aftermarket version, certainly better in the wet than like an RZ or something, because BMW will want a minimum standard for wet. It's a European car, so there'll be a minimum standard for rolling resistance, and obviously a dry grip and stability is going to be one of their key focuses because they want that Nürburgring lap time.
So what you're telling me is that Ford never has done tire testing in the world because they said, hey, we want to make it so our S550 can just flail off into a crowd and kill everybody. God, I get it now.
Yeah. No comment from me officially. Yeah.
In terms of tuning, are the tire manufacturers, I mean, and the answer may be all of the above, or the answer may be you're not entirely sure, but I mean, are they looking at changing the actual like construction of the tire, looking at compounds, the rubber compounds, looking at maybe even tread patterns, etc., like tuning all of these factors?
Yeah, all of the above. Tread pattern is
Okay.
obviously tread pattern doesn't make a huge amount of difference to dry grip. It's more like water clearance and noise. But the tread pattern
I
is,
guess maybe depending on how much tread or little tread you have, they may
yeah.
say, well, we actually we need a little more, we want a bigger block on the inner shoulder or something like that.
Yeah,
Maybe something
if
like
they
that. Yeah.
maybe they want like more steering reaction or more stiffness on the outer shoulder, so they'll remove some blocking. But generally, it is more like you can do a lot with. Obviously, you can do a huge amount with compound, especially on the more advanced OE tires from companies like Michelin and Pirelli that effectively 3D print tires now. Michelin have something called a 3cm. So instead of laying like big belts of rubber, they have an extruder and they spin it on, and that allows them to change the compound across the tire face very easily.
Wow.
So they have like like on the Pilot Sport 4S, the OE version for the GAT M3, they've effectively got like a Cup 2 compound on the outer shoulder for like dry grip, and then they've got a silica rib, and then they've got like more of the Cup 2 compound, and then back to like a more wet focused compound on the inside. So they're doing some really smart things with that. And then even it's incredible how like tiny changes to even like the bead and how the bead interacts with the wheel can have a huge impact on like a tire steering response and overall performance. So they can do almost an infinite amount of things with like carcass and compound to really tune. And then you've obviously, with the advantage of having split fitments, so a different size front and rear, is you then get to tune the front and rear tires separately. So you can say, this is my front tire. This tire does not have to do anything on the rear axle. It will never be fitted to a rear axle in theory. So we know we want the front axle to be really sharp on steering input to get that nice steering reaction, but we can make the rear tire, perhaps if it was mounted on the front, feel a little bit more lazy, but that's going to give the rear of the vehicle more stability. So that's the characteristic we want, like a sharp turning, but actually quite a stable rear, so we're not pushing oversteer.
I will say this, Jonathan. I watched your video where you started talking about the OE aspects and how they design, the fronts versus the rears, and exactly what you're talking about right now. And I didn't realize that they went into that level of signifying front end versus, front axle versus rear axle. So that was really interesting to me. And obviously you breaking that down to more of a degree now makes even more sense. And at the same time, that much scarier, because people like me are stupid, and I'll go, hey, I have a Porsche Cayman. I want to run a bigger tire in the front and the rear. So wait, this manufacturer makes that here, and I can put, essentially the same thing concept in theory. I could take the rear tire, put it to the front, and then I could get a different tire, put it in the rear. Oh, and this would be great because it's just a bigger tire. It'll just be more grip. And by taking the information provided, now keeping in mind there's a lot of idiosyncrasies to this about if it's a purpose-built tire for a specific platform. But that's something, I guess, for our viewers to actually think about and to research a little bit more before they make these decisions. So to kind of break that ribbon a little bit more, so when we start talking about, like what Kilgore was saying, when you start talking about like the Hoosier Time Attack Pro, that obviously wasn't manufactured in that same way. So you end up in the more, I want to say cautious, because that is definitely not the right word, but a simplistic approach of like this, they're not building that for a front or a rear axle. It's just like a overarching, like this is a tire that's made to go on.
Just grip. We want grip. We want grip numbers, etc. Or we want certain reactions.
It's not as tuned to the eventual platform it's going on, because it's not, but it's still a good tire. And in your analogy of you might be putting a rear tire on the front of your Cayman, you never know. It might actually work really well. But that's the thing. Like, as a tire tester, I would love to test every vehicle tire combination that exists. But sadly, that's not in my budget.
Not enough time or energy or money in the world.
I would try my best if I could, honestly. But that's where, like, going back to the monkeys with typewriters, if you get enough opinions into a ball, hopefully it'll be some sort of overriding okay average. But it's why we touched upon already, why testing your own driving style, vehicle, track combination is so important, because what works for the guy on the internet the other side of the country who probably can't drive. Let's face it, most of these keyboard warriors on the groups really can't drive. So they're not even getting like the P1 up to temperature, let alone overheating it.
Yeah.
It's knowledge has to come from within, sadly, on this. That's why I say you might end up more confused at the end of this than you were at the start.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this, although someone can absolutely prove me wrong, but I think that is probably, tire testing is probably one of the reasons that the professional teams spend so much money and time on that aspect, because it is so important, especially going to multiple different tracks, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they probably maybe look at the tracks and say, okay, we can go test at this track and it is going to be representative of track A, B, and C that we're going to be running. And then we need to go to, right, a Daytona is going to be very different to, a Long Beach, a street circuit versus a banked oval, right? So we need to understand those two things. So, right, we can maybe do testing at 2 or 3 tracks that will generally give us an understanding of what we'll be looking at throughout the year. But that's why they spend so much time and energy and effort into that type of testing and money, versus all of us keyboard warriors. We just see what everybody says is the fastest and show up, and then we complain, like, these things suck.
Yeah, then leave nasty comments on Facebook telling people they can't drive, or YouTube.
The Tyre Reviews YouTube
Idiot
comment section full of good information.
So, quick question for you. One thing I could be wrong, so don't hate me too much. One thing I'm trying to remember from all of your testing, you do talk about the pressures of the tires. You talk about that, but I'm trying to recall, is there a lot of communication in regards to what you see tire temperature wise? And obviously you talk about overheating, but yeah, that was kind of always, I was always curious on that aspect, because I guess, like, from my experience, like, one thing I detested about the Nanking CRSs on my heavy behemoth of a Mustang with my limited camber capabilities is the tire would roll over like crazy. And I just despised how I just wore that whole outer area and it was rolling over onto the sidewall. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll give it more tire pressure to keep so again.
And then you're slower.
Yeah, and then I'm slower. And so I'm like, well, this is annoying. And then interestingly enough, I go to funny story. So this goes into exactly what you're talking about, and I'm going to give my little story of life. I ran a set of a bit used Nanking CRS tires, ran lap times at Willow Springs and around, and then I ran a set of Vitor Enzos, which was their 200 treadwear, but 300 treadwear, but whatever. Ran those, and I actually ran faster on the Vitor Enzos.
Which makes no sense.
Which makes zero. But so for the CRSs, the car was rolling over heavy onto the sidewalls and then putting air pressure into them to make it so it didn't happen. And then it got slower. Whereas the Vitors, they had a stiffer sidewall characteristic. The car felt pointier. I felt like I could actually get it to the apex easier. It drove much smoother for my driving style. Going back to driving style matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I was faster. No, not by leaps and bounds. We're talking tenths.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be any faster. It should be slower.
Yeah, and so this goes into the impressions and like cars, very specific aspects of that. But it's interesting, strange, but cool. And this is where, like you said, like you have to drive different things and understand what they are. And so I was going somewhere with that. Or did I just tell a story just to tell a story? I don't know yet.
It was a good story. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
But it is interesting. And it honestly, it put this like weird sour taste in my mouth with the Nankings, where I was like, man, I don't think I'd want to run those on my Mustang again, just because of how poorly I felt they performed. Now, granted, I did get them from a BMW guy who blew his motor and threw oil kind of all over the place. So maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe. Were
they used when you bought them, I assume?
Yes.
And were you aware of the heat cycle history?
He said he did 2 sessions.
He said?
Yes. I did watch him at the time attack where he blew the motor.
Okay.
So
okay, so that's 50% tire, 50% oil. Classic BMW things. Okay.
But it was interesting to me. And that's where I was like very interested and confused. But at the same time, like they were good tires. At the time, putting them on my Mustang, that was the fastest time I'd ever done in my Mustang because they were the best tires I'd ever put on my Mustang to that point. And one of the things was I was trying to change it up a bit because before that I'd used. You'll really love this. Before that, the best tire I'd put on my Mustang was a Federal RSRR.
I'm sorry.
Which are great for, I always say this, I will say this to everybody under the sun. If you are starting off in tracking and you want a very durable tire that will do a ton of laps, throw a Federal on there and you will do lap after lap. You will go till the year's done and you will still have tread on the tire.
Which like, is a very important quality if you're starting driving. Like a consistent tire is the best. A consistent and reactive and a tire that gives good feedback is all you can ask for when you're starting out. You don't need to be fast. You want to be fast, but you want to understand what your car's doing and what you're doing before you start thinking about being the fastest guy out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll jump into this then. So let's talk very specifically about that Super 200, as Kilgore alluded to, the Yokohama, the Hoosier, the Vitor, the Falcon, the Nankang. Obviously, I don't think I'm making assumptions because it's so new. The new Bridgestone that's coming out, and recently I've put the Kumo Exta 730s on my Mustang, which, by the way. Again, so now that's kind of one of the best tires I've had on my car. And I just went to Willow Springs the other day and ran 300ths of a better lap time than I did with the Vitor Enzos. So make that make sense.
Interesting.
The V730s, not many people in Time Attack run them, but they are, at least in the Grid Life GLTC, they were extremely popular for 15-minute races from a standpoint of, and Jonathan can note this, very good heat tolerance and consistency throughout, a 15 to 20-minute session, as well as lasting, multiple heat cycles. They don't heat cycle out too quickly, like a lot of those do. So, but again, different horses for different courses. It kind of depends on what you're doing and what you're wanting to do with your car, how you want to run it, etc. So, I think the V730s tend to be very good. And Jonathan, please give your opinion in terms of people who are wanting a pretty quick, decent 200 treadwear tire. I kind of, the V730s as well as the 660 pluses to a degree. But those are sort of some of the ones that I think of as good track day tires that are decently quick, but also hold up quite well throughout a long session for people who are doing 15, 20-minute sessions and can get multiple weekends out of a tire. You will tend to run the tread down on the tire before you really kind of heat cycle them out, depending on, of course, again, all the typical caveats, depending on what you're driving style, etc.
And Jonathan, I'll just caveat this one quick thing. I was running a 305 Enzo, and this is versus a Kumo that's on a 275.
Oh, so it's quite a bit of width.
Little deltas.
I like the Kumo. My first set of track tires ever was the V70A, which was the previous version of the 730. So big fan of it. Like you say, in the testing I've done and the testing I've seen, it's not troubling the Super 200s for one lap pace. But if you're doing more than one lap, that one lap pace goes out the window a little bit. And then you want to know the average of the lap time over 15, 20 minutes, and a tire. Like I'm going to make a video about this sort of at the start of next year, summarizing my Viator P1, Nankang CRS, and Bridgestone RE71 RS test, because I'm not going to release that test now because 2 of the tires have been replaced. So that's a bit of a wasted expense. But like the Bridgestone was the fastest over a single lap, but the Nankang was the fastest over the average. And I said the Viator for me, I'd overheated it before I'd even started the fast laps. So the Viator for my particular driving style is not a brilliant option. And I had multiple sets of the Viator, the P1 as well, actually.
Okay.
So I just didn't manage the tire the way it needs to be managed.
Were those on the on your F80
Yeah.
or were you on the because I also know you tend to at sometimes go down to, is it thermal?
Yeah.
Am I getting that right? Thermal with
Yeah.
the GT4s and some of those.
Yeah.
So yeah.
A quick
Okay,
question
so it was on your
that
F80, yeah.
on that test itself, when you did just simple, like crazy 1-lap pace, just a 1-lap banger, what was the order there, out of curiosity's sake?
So I didn't do the 1-lap banger. I basically had 2 hours of track time booked, which is like expensive, as you know. So I try and do everything as quickly as possible.
I don't know how the hell you get that done in 2 hours.
It's 3 sets plus, so it's 4 sets. So this is why I didn't do the 1-lap banger. It was go out relatively low pressures to warm them into what I want my target hot pressure to be over 3 or 4 laps, come in, reset pressures to target, and then go and do my 4 or 5 fast laps. But like I said, the first lap on the Viator, the first push fast lap, my in lap was a fast lap, but it's not a timed lap because you don't cross the beam twice. And then my first push lap on the Viator, the tire was overheated by like turn 3.
Wow.
The Bridgestone lasted lap and a half before the rears were getting squirrely. I say the Nankang was just consistent across 3. And the delta between the Bridgestone and the Nankang first lap was about half a second over a minute 40 lap. So not that much, but then in favor of the Bridgestone. But by lap 4, the Nankang was a second and a quarter faster than the Bridgestone. So if you're doing a 15-minute race, like there's almost no contest from that test which tire you would be on. It would be the Nankang.
Yep.
As long as you're not driving a Mustang, apparently. Then it's an Enzo for some weird reason. I'm very excited to try the Sonic. I know we haven't got to that yet. But the Sonic and the new updated versions of the Viator products. But from what, like I said, I've seen what Dallas has been posting on the Facebook groups, and I think Andy from Grassroots has run a test on one of them. I don't know if it's public yet. But I think the thermal capacity of those tires is going to be more in line with the existing products. I don't think they've really added thermal. They've added pace, hopefully.
An interesting thing for me is,
I'm not going to
for my Cayman, I actually just purchased some P1s to try it on the Cayman because obviously there's a lot of lore right now in the time attack community of the P1s and how great they are. So I was like, I got to try these things for myself. And I had just gotten the Kumos for the Mustang. So I got some time on my hands before I go get a different set for the Mustang. And I'm not going to lie, for me, I'm in between like a Yokohama Advan and a Time Attack Pro for the Mustang as my next tryout tire for them. Just trying to try out some more Super 200 tires to see what else is good. Like you said, right? Like for me, I always love to try new tires, to test out different tires to see what they did. Like for me, the Kumo has been very, very intriguing because even though as a smaller tire size, I've actually been very happy with the overall performance of the tire. And it's great to try out different tires. I mean, I try to snag them up as cheap as possible for obvious reasons. That's why I bought the CRSs in a used capacity.
Yeah.
Which after my usage of them, I was like, I'm glad I got these used for $500, because if I would have paid $1,800 for these tires, I'd have gotten like annoyed as hell. But again, that's me. I know some other people, Jackie Ding including, would tell me I'm an idiot because he's like, these tires are amazing and he ran them super well for a long period of time.
I wonder if it's sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Like obviously, I'm testing a tire size. GRM's testing another tire size. Tyrex testing another tire size. There is variance in performance across sizes. So I'm wondering if there was maybe just a quirk of that particular size, or maybe like there's always variance coming out of factories. Even the best tire manufacturing factories in the world have varied performance, and they sometimes have like bad batches of tires come out. I'm not saying that's the case with the CRS. Sounds more likely they absorbed a lot of oil at some point in their life, and that perhaps wasn't the best overall experience. I'd love it if you tried another set of the CRSs to see if it would change your opinion. Maybe I actually, ironically, I have a call with Nankang at midnight tonight, so maybe I'll bring it up.
Tell him I need
Nice.
another test set.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, just one question. The Nankang to Viator Enzo comparison you did, were they the same size on the same width of wheel?
Same exact wheel, a 295 compared to a 305.
Okay, so not drastically different.
Yeah.
Because obviously if you're going from like a 275 to a 305 on the same wheel, you've gone from a slight stretch, which will give you no shoulder rollover, to a balloon tire, which is just going to make the tire rotate and fold under a lot. So I was just, double checking.
Yeah, I think a big part, projection on my part, but it seemed like the Nankangs obviously ran a little bit wider, which I'm running a 295 on an 11-inch wheel. So it's not like a huge stretch by any stretch of imagination, where the Enzos were a little bit narrower tire than and so it did create more of a stretch, but it was a 305, but at the same time, so the it kind of equaled out to be about the same. So it was kind of interesting. And I do keep as much data as possible, so I could even show you some that's kind of interesting in terms of the lap times and literally I do back-to-back comparisons, look at all the data. I can see where my driving is the problem, because obviously we are drivers, we make mistakes, those things happen. But I usually drive in a kind of an interesting thing, and this is a question I'm going to throw to you, Jonathan. So when you do these tire tests, I do always wonder, what's the, as we say in the time attack world, what's your tenths? Like, are you pushing your car? Are you driving, obviously I don't think you're driving 10 tenths or 11 tenths. Like, what's the level of performance that you're kind of pushing it at to keep it still repeatable, but still push the tire?
10.
Oh, okay.
I'm absolutely as fast, especially on a 200 category test. There's no point driving around at 9 tenths. I mean, I guess there is, because a lot of the users are probably driving around at the equivalence of 9 tenths. But yeah, I'm trying to set my fastest lap every lap.
Okay, I love that, because I was always curious watching your videos of like, I wonder if he has kind of like a threshold that he's like, okay, 9 tenths, I'm pushing the car, getting it to a slip angle, I'm keeping it within this bounds, or if it's like, nah, man, I'm just, because I'll be 100% honest in how I drive. Like my Mustang, I'm a little sissy when it comes to this. I'm like, I want this car to drive and last and da-da-da-da. So I was just having this conversation with someone the other day where I was like, yeah, going around Big Willow, I can either keep it in 5th gear and I'm at like 6,700 RPMs and it's just getting close to red line, or I can shift up and be in 6th gear going around turn 8 at 134 miles an hour. And I'm like, yeah, I lose a couple mile per hour. Yeah, I lose, but it's like I can see it in the data. So as long as I'm consistent with it, I mean, I kind of looked at it as like I'm okay with that differentiation to be able to have a car that I can continue to drive over and over and over.
Yeah. But and I guess the joy of my work is it's more often than not my car. So like I don't have to baby it. And the M3 that I've got here, I have promised myself when it blows up, I'm going to LS swap it, which to me will make me an official American. God. So I don't care if that blows up.
You just blew Kilgore's mind. He just said, you just ruined my BMW, bro, love.
I've got to do it once in my life. I've got to LS swap something now I live here.
That's fair. I can respect that. I can respect that. So Jonathan, in terms of when you're driving and when you're doing 10 tenths, what are some of the most common attributes of the car and of the tire that you start noticing when a tire starts to fall off or when it starts to get a little bit slower? Braking performance, turn in, mid corner, exit. Like, what are some of the common things you start feeling as the tire loses traction?
Yeah, that's obviously largely dependent on the vehicle you're using. Like an M3 is going to report it in a drastically different way to a Golf. But for generally with my driving style, and I'm generally testing with rear-wheel drive vehicles, I'm overheating the rear tires. Yeah, of course. I'm overheating the rear tires long before the fronts. So braking performance generally doesn't matter in the initial part of like the turn-in phase is probably be okay, but it's as I'm like coming off the brake pedal when trail braking, I'm starting to get more rear rotation as the rears are overheating as I'm picking up the throttle mid corner. You've just got to be slightly more delicate on the throttle, hesitate before pushing down that little bit more, and then corner exit. Obviously, if you're the downside of using an F80 platform is their engines are pretty spiky. So you've got to be very mindful of when and where the boost is going to come in with regards to throttle application, especially as tires start to overheat. But I'm certainly I've done it to myself as well. I like a car that's really, really pointy. I can't deal with understeer in my personal life. I'd rather be fighting oversteer, so I run a 275 square as a test size on my M3. That's also easier for testing because you can rotate front to rear, and it's a very common size. But it does mean I'm hugely rear limited. But even like on the GT4 at thermal, I'm cooking the rear tires long before I've troubled the fronts.
Yeah. And is the F80 is it a 6-speed or is it a DCT?
It's a DCT.
All right, good man.
I've got so I've had a bunch of E92s. I've still got an E92 M3, which is a manual. But for testing, honestly, the DCT is the better platform because it's just one less thing you can get wrong. And like I say, as Jager said, we are human. We do make mistakes occasionally. And if you're doing 4 laps on a tire that will only give you 4 laps, or will only give you 2 laps before it's overheated, then you've done that tire an injustice. So I really like the DCT box. It's a great gearbox. As much as I miss shifting myself, I can do that in my personal life rather than my test life.
There you go. So I'm gonna press the issue, Jonathan. I'm gonna press it. I'm gonna say, give me in that 200 treadwear category, and I'm gonna say it in this way. Throw it in your BMW and put it on a track that you know, you love, you can crush. What is the fastest 3 tires in a 1 lap? I'm going to go be the fastest man alive. And the tire that I want to hear your fastest tire. And then I want to hear what tire you'd want to be on. And I say that because maybe not the fastest tire, but the tire that I could go around, and if I got blocked, there's other people on track, maybe, so you end up in a situation where I might need 2 or 3 laps to get there. What tire is that? And is it the same tire? Is it a different tire?
It's a good question. As always, there's no simple answer. In my experience, the Hoosier Track Attack Pro is a very fast 200 for 1 lap. Like, it does have quite a big thermal drop off as it gets hot. So I wouldn't want to use it for a 20-minute race. But for 1 lap, it's very fast. However, the counter argument to that, which I would argue against myself, is when I've tested the Track Attack Pro, it's been at 5:30 seconds. And when I've tested the RE71 RS against it, it's been at 7:30 seconds. And the RE71 RS has been relatively close, but we know extra tread depth means less precise steering. It means more block movement, so you get more heat into the tire, so you've got less thermal capacity. So I haven't tread depth. I couldn't tell you if the the Track Attack Pro is the fastest because I've not done it. I'm pretty sure Andy at Grassroots Motorsport has done it against a shaved RE71 RS, and I don't think there was much in it. But I really like the sort of subjective handling, which is like how the tire reacts, the steering response, the balance of the car. I like the fact the Track Attack Pro kind of feels crazy. It's got in the sizes I've tested on the vehicles I've tested, it's always had a super sharp turning response. And then that often leaves the rear of the vehicle perhaps a little bit wandery, but we've just said that's how I want to be driving. So the Track Attack Pro would be right up there. The RE71RZ, I'm going to say.
Let me ask one question before we move on. On the Track Attack Pros, have you seen or noticed anything from a standpoint of it heat cycles out very quickly? I've heard that just through the paddock, through people talking that they've tried it. It was very fast early on, but then it really hit a cliff after not very many heat cycles, 3-4 heat cycles. And then they said like it was, a second or a second and a half slower. I didn't know if you'd run into that or if you'd had an opportunity to kind of test that specifically.
Unfortunately, I personally don't get the chance to do deep heat cycle runs because I'm testing a set of tires and they're going in the trash generally because I've got more sets of tires to test. I don't really have the opportunity to drive for fun anymore because I'm always driving for testing. I think Andy's.
It sounds like you and Jager need to hook up because Jager needs to purchase your used tires.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. You need to have Andy on the podcast from Grassroots Motorsport because he would be better answering this because he does heat cycle some of his tires deep down. And I'm pretty sure he's done some heat cycle runs on his vehicle. I know he's done it with the Bridgestones. I thought he'd done it with the Hoosier, but again, that comes down to he's heat cycling them on a relatively light vehicle with a moderate wear or a moderate driving style. But I haven't heard it. I know some people who've been using an F80 M4 GT4 in WRL, and they tried the Track Attack Pro, and they were certainly wearing the tires out before they heat cycled them out, because they were using 2 or 3 sets of race, I think. Whereas something like a CRS might last an entire race. They did a lot of benchmarking against the AO52 and the Track Attack Pro, and I think their conclusion was, I only spoke to one of their drivers, but she was faster on the Track Attack Pro for the first lap, so that 1 lap wonder, but then I think she preferred the braking on the the Yokohama. So they sided with that, and they were getting relatively similar wear. Again, different starting tread depths. If you want to be fair in tire testing, you should really be shaving tires and looking at the complete life cycle of them.
One thing I want to ask you real quick, because you've talked about it a couple times about the tread blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of give the amateur guys like myself give a good understanding of when you say the tread blocks. What are you really pushing and talking about in that concept?
Well, I guess I guess I'm wrong in saying that. So obviously, the more rubber you have between like the tread cap of the tire and the tread cap of the carcass, so the stiff belting, and then the top of the tread that touches the surface of the road. If you have 5 30 seconds compared to 10 30 seconds, as you turn your wheel or as your car's undulating and bouncing around over bumps or whatever it's doing, you're putting energy into that tire. And the rubber, although obviously tire rubber is stiff, it's not as stiff as steel or nylon or whatever they're using in the tread cap. So you've got more rubber deforming. And that's generating heat. Everything, every time you turn, every time you brake and you're deforming the rubber, you're generating heat. So a tire starting at 730 seconds is going to have both a steering reaction disadvantage and thermal capacity disadvantage over a tire starting at 530 seconds. And I say that's one of the things Hoosier did with the Track Attack Pro was they decided to mold it to 530 seconds. So it had that better advantage, and as far as I'm understood, that's what the fast guys do in NASA and SCCA and probably Time Attack. They buy the tires from Tyre Rack, and then they get Tyre Rack to shave 50% of the usable surface off them before they ever fit them, and they heat cycle them. So like, hey, yeah, there's $2,000 in tires, but actually, can you just shave $800 of that off, please? Like, it's crazy. That's why, like, honestly,
by the way, they're going to charge you more for that. By the way,
yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Which I mean, it is crazy. At the same time, I think that, as I said earlier, for me, I tend to heat cycles out way before I ever run out of tread. So I'm leaving a whole bunch of meat on the tire, but it does me no good, right? So why not? If I'm only going to use a quarter of the tread rubber, I'll take 50% of it off, and it's going to be of no ill quality to me, and ultimately it makes you faster. Which again, I also think to your point of thermal capacity, that's one thing that's always been a little counterintuitive to me. You would think that, okay, if there was more rubber, it would be able to take more heat. But actually, it's the opposite, because there's so much more movement, it builds up that much more heat, and so it heat soaks that much more quickly.
You're right. Technically, it could take more heat, but we're talking like fractions of a difference in terms of overall like thermal input. But what you're getting is more thermal generation due to the high tread. I do think spec tires is a good thing generally for competition, or for amateur motorsport, because it saves It's a huge amount of money. If you're told, okay, this is the tire, like you're using an Nankang CRS or using a Extreme Contact Force, a tire you know can do laps and is relatively stable or very stable, then all you have to worry about is spending money testing setup and driving style choices, pressures maybe. You're not doing that, but with 6 different types of tires at the same time. I know maybe a Spec tire in Time Attack is completely wrong, but I can certainly see why high-end motorsport switches to it. And why things like WRL, I believe most of their classes are on a Spec tire, just to try and give some sort of budget control.
I mean,
I would actually, I would say I'm not totally against it from a standpoint of if you have a Spec tire for a class, and I know that everyone else is going to be on it, save the fact that you may need, however many sets in a weekend, depending on what the, how the tire ages out. But to me, that sort of is like, okay, we're all on the same tire. That frees up, let's say that everybody has a certain budget. That frees up more of a budget to do other things to the car, right?
Yeah.
I can work more on power or my engine. I can work more on aero. I can do more setup, right? Like, so I think it's actually beneficial from a standpoint of you would get to see more. You don't see like people just spending a ton of money on tire testing, but you actually get to see development of a car instead of development of what's the best tire for a certain track, etc.
Yeah,
I'm sure you remember F1 when it was Bridgestone and Michelin, and there was all the Michelin cars were always the top 10 or whatever it was, however many ran, and then there was Ferrari and Bridgestone which could compete, and then no one else on the Bridgestone would get close. It just shows the power of tires.
Yeah, an interesting construct. So a couple years ago, things like World Time Attack, they were Yokohama based. So that was everyone was on a Yokohama. They have thus dropped that off. Now everybody can run whatever they want. And same kind of construct here in the US where GTA was technically under the Yokohama. One thing that we do find bad in Time Attack is when you go to a Spec tire per class, the problem is that we have such a wide variety of car that it now puts you into how do you get enough tires to go against all of those different cars? So that kind of brings into faults. But I actually love I actually do love the concept of Spec tire, especially when we talk about per class. So when we talked about like a 220 or higher treadwear or a 200 treadwear or a 60 or higher or the unlimited class, I do love the construct of a Spec tire just because it does, like you said, does free up some of the brain bites to worry about other things. And this is probably my biggest love of that concept is if you do a Spec tire, if you can do it correctly, work with the manufacturer and provide lower cost to the racers, that's where the benefit really shines. And that's where racers love you.
A good Spec tire is a tire that you'll get multiple weekends from. It's not one that you have to change because you're dropping off time with wear or you're heat cycling out. Like I know WRL uses the Extreme Contact Force, and there are people that will use them for like 2-3 weekends. There's some guys in NASA here that use a set of Extreme Contact Forces for the entire season. I mean, it's not a Spec tire, so they're not the fastest, but a Spec tire doesn't have to be the fastest tire if everyone's on it. It can be a slow tire, but as long as it manages thermal well and wear well, wear well, as long as it doesn't wear out very quickly, it's happy days for everyone involved.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point, Jager, Falcon and Club TR for Grid Life, and exactly just what you were talking about, Jonathan. Those guys were really finding that basically after one weekend, the tire had lost too much grip, right? And that it's an extremely competitive class, right? You need if you're losing a couple tenths to half a second, that could be the difference between winning, losing, or maybe even third place. And so they are trying to get absolutely every tenth out of the tire. So basically they, would start off a weekend or they would start off a season with 2 fresh sets. They would run one set as a practice set, and then they would leave one for the prime condition. And then basically the next weekend or the next event, they would get one new set, the ones that were on the prime, and they'd basically just start doing this rotation, so basically every event you're talking about one new fresh set of tires. Again, that's the guys that are at the very front of the class, that are
feared.
going for championships. Yeah. And that sort of, to me, to a degree, that's somewhat to be expected in time attack. If you're pushing, look, when we were at Road Atlanta, we were half a second. We ended up half a second between first, second, and third. In my
Nice.
class, I was half a second, and I ended up third position, right? And that's why I was maximizing everything that I could. That's why I went to a 11.5-inch wide wheel. I was like, all right, what is the absolute maximum I can fit? Now we'll get into this shortly if we have enough time, but I didn't do as much testing in terms of, well, what's the weight of that wheel, and then am I losing any performance from the larger weight of the wheel versus size, et cetera. There's all sorts of things to consider. I don't have enough budget to really be able to go into that, so I just got to make educated guesses, and that's what I did. But yeah, I mean, it can be really good, but at the same time, it is what it is in terms of, if you're absolutely at the front end of the field, you will spend whatever you need to spend to make sure that you are competitive. And for some tires, they don't hold up well enough from that perspective of losing a couple tenths.
And I just want to say this. So it's actually, obviously, just to give some context, Jonathan. The guy who took home the win and a record from Buttonwillow Raceway at GTA Finals this past couple of months ago.
If you tell me he was on an Enzo, I'm going to be really mad. Just saying.
His name is Bailey Woods, and an interesting story is he was on
the Track Attack Pros.
Track Attack Pros. And I had a conversation with someone after, and they're like, oh man, if only he was on an Advan AO52, he would have gone faster. And I said to him, I was like, well, the information I got from Mr. Bailey was that he's used a plethora of different tires, and in his testing for his BMW E36, 36? The Track Attack Pros have been the better tire, and he believes they are faster. And the person I'm talking about, you know who you are out there, they were like, not a chance, you're an idiot. And I'm just saying, this is what we're looking at, right? Those type of conversations where his testing with his car and how he drives, that Track Attack Pro is the weapon of choice for him. And that's what he found to be ideal. And I'm just gonna toot my own horn here a little bit. I'm gonna use Jonathan as my crutch and say everything Jonathan has said the Track Attack Pro. If you're looking for that one fastest hyper, that might not be the perfect tire, but man, for that one lap wonder, it could be.
It for some people it will be. Like your friend who runs the Track Attack Pro on his E36. He's obviously he can feel smug about his decision if he took home the first place.
Yep.
There are some absolute diehard fans of the AO52. I remember I did a test with it actually on an E36 lightweight number of years ago now. And in my test, it wasn't the fastest. Actually, the BF Goodrich G-Force Rival 1.5 was the fastest. And the amount of hate I got in the comments from the Yokohama guys was obscene. Actually, I was surprised. From I just thought the Yokohama people were like a higher class of tire purchasers. But no, I got some abuse in the comments. I'm like, hey, like there were two drivers that day. It wasn't just me, and we both ran the same program. And the BF Goodrich in that size on that vehicle was faster. Also, the size we used was a fairly small size. The vehicle we used, it was a factory E36 lightweight, and that was one of the development vehicles for the BF Goodrich. So that obviously played to its strength in that size. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually remember watching that video, and I said to myself, I literally said, really? The rival?
Yeah.
Like one of those moments of, what the hell?
And other people have found in smaller sizes that 1.5 is a fast tire in certain applications, but it's obviously not in a lot of sizes. It's not as fast as the 52. So one of the quirks of tire testing.
I feel like I was watching Tire Rack or something recently, and they were talking about like how quick the Rival 1.5 was compared to some of the other Super 200s. And it is, again, it's like one of those things. That tire, that compound is what, 4 or 5 years old now? I mean, it hasn't, really stayed up to date in
Correct.
terms of compound for what some of the new ones are. And I saw that, and it does just sort of make you go, all right, hold on. What's going on here? Just not what I would have expected. But like to your point, there's just so many variables that are dependent. So, it is what it is. That again, I think that's why you have to take as many data points as you can to make, if you're going to make any conclusions. You don't look through one little pinhole. You gotta find as much as you can.
The Miata
Yeah.
guys love that tire. I can say that definitively.
Sure.
The Miata guys absolutely loved that. And I ran it on my Miata at one point. Thought it was a great tire. So
Makes adds up. Light cars, small wheel sizes, good tire. Maybe the bigger stuff less so.
So Jonathan, I just mentioned this. I kind of want to get to it. Unless Jager, do you have anything else on this topic?
no, go for it.
Okay. You did a really interesting video where you tested actual, wheel the weight of the wheel tire as a combination. What are its effects on acceleration, braking, overall track performance? It was so interesting. I definitely think any viewers, listeners out there, go check that one out. Give us a little bit of a breakdown of why you wanted to do that, sort of how you set that up, and then what your conclusions were.
Yeah. So it's a test I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I found a Chinese forged wheel manufacturer that would make some custom wheels within budget. So I had an Apex VRS5. I can't remember the Apex. One of the popular Apex
VS5 RS.
Thank you very much. Beautiful wheel. 19
Terrible
or 20
name.
pound in the 19 by 10 fitment I was using. It's like just about 20 pound. And then I tried to have the heaviest wheel possible made, which ended up 52 pound per 19 by 10 wheel, and then I tried to have one made in the middle, and sadly when it was produced it swayed a little bit more towards the heavy wheel than the light wheel, but I still ran all three. And the reason I wanted to do it is I like internet lore and I love forums, and I've been a weight person. I like my first proper track car was an MR2 Turbo, an SW20. And I was so obsessed with weight savings with that when I got into it. I was like pulling wires out of the wiring loom for I've deleted the air conditioning, so let's pull all the wiring out to save that 6 ounces or whatever it'd be. So I was fully into that. And then everyone knows unsprung weight is worse than sprung weight because you're not controlling it with the damper. And then most people know that rotational weight is the worst of all because there's a multiplier applied to it. And you hear things like, well, if you're adding a pound on the wheel, it's like adding 10 pound on your car. So I was like, how true is this? And also it was an excuse to do a fun test. I knew it would get some views, which is obviously very important for my business model. But really, like I really wanted to do that for myself. So I had these wheels made up and I avoided doing any of the math beforehand because I don't like being prejudiced. Generally, when I'm testing blind. If I get someone else changing my wheels and tires, I don't know what wheels and tires I'm on, so I don't like to pre-influence my brain. So I think even the best people in the world still have if I know I'm on a Michelin on a street tire, I know this is a good tire, so maybe I'll push a little bit harder. So I try and remove all that. But for this test, I didn't do the math because I really wanted to. I didn't want to be prejudiced by what I thought should happen. I thought there would be massive differences. So I did traction, which was I think I did 50 to 140 kilometers an hour. And the differences were, what was it, 4% between the light wheels and the heavy wheels in traction. And I know that's not the same as accelerating from a standing start, but I pay for the clutches in my car, and standing starts are really difficult to do in a repeated way and get consistent data. And then when I went on track, it's
very true.
Yeah. And then when I went on track, I think the difference between the lightest, so the 20 pound wheel and the 52 pound wheel, bear in mind that's per wheel. So I think the mass difference in total was 130 pound, I think, just in wheel weight. The lap time over a minute and a half lap, minute 40 lap was about a second and a half, which is significant, right? If I'm saying take your wheel off and fit this wheel and you're going to save a second and a half, you'd wet yourself with joy. But
it's not quite as big as I was maybe expecting, though.
Yeah, likewise.
It is significant, but it's not quite as much as I thought.
But that's the point. like my OE wheels on the F80 M3, they're actually pretty light wheels. They're like they're mid-20s, low-20s pounds. So by putting an aftermarket wheel on, you're saving maybe a couple of pound a wheel. And yeah, if you're a time attack guy who wants to save that 0.001 of a second a lap, great. But for the guys getting into track days who are like, oh, you've got to buy light wheels, otherwise you're gonna like ruin everything. The results weren't as clear as I thought. And if I remember rightly, there was some interesting subjective differences as well. Obviously, your wheel is a big rotating disc, so you have centrifugal forces. So the steering is harder with a heavier wheel. That's logical. But what I did find with my OE dampers, because I ran it twice once with OE dampers and one with some MCS three-way remotes, on things like curbs and big impacts, the heavy wheel was actually smoother across the sawtooth curb because the damper wasn't reacting in time. So you just have this wheel kind of like skipping across the top. And there was some like interesting caveats that I found from it. But yeah, the conclusion from that test was wheel weight is important for sure. Especially if you're racing, but like like we said with tires, if you're just getting into something, it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter as much as the internet would have you believe. But yeah, I would still sell my leg to get a set of magnesium wheels for whatever reason.
Yeah, this for a little bit of specificity here, I pulled back up the specific lap times for the Apex setup, which was about 20 pounds. We'll call it 20 pounds, I think, for the Apex wheel, forged 18 or 19. Do you know?
No, they're all 19 by 10. Yeah, ET25.
Okay, yeah, 19 by 10. Yeah.
I'm just going to say one thing. When it comes to magnesium wheels, if you're looking for a set, our podcast sponsor, Whoosh Automotive, does make magnesium wheels. Just throwing it out there. Here at the Perfect Lap Podcast, we're happy to introduce Whoosh Bespoke Wheels as a sponsor of the show. Whoosh Bespoke was born out of necessity. Their race team struggled to find wheels that offer the perfect fit, strength, durability, and that big old thing, a reasonable price. The people behind Whoosh Bespoke are racers and engineers seeking engineering excellence, and they offer precision forged wheels crafted by racers for racers with a product lineup that includes a wide range of options from monoblock to modular wheels, including 2- and 3-piece wheel designs, all engineered from the finest materials, although they do primarily use 6061 T6 forged aluminum, but they do offer things as high of quality as a magnesium alloy. So this really can work for any setup you're trying to go for. Customization is at the heart of what they do at Whoosh Bespoke. You can tailor your wheels with custom sizes, offsets, finishes, and even options like custom lettering, adding two-tones. Their colors include both standard and premium finishes, as well as special finishes like brushed, hand-polished, and even paint to sample. Every set of wheels produced exceeds the JWL standards and meets the rigorous WCEC quality standards, and they are tested by real people with real cars racing all around the world. And guess what? Me and Kilgore, we're also going to be part of that team. So we're going to be putting these things to the test. We're putting them on our cars. Kilgore is going to be repping out and going through all the time attack season. I'm going to be beating them up at HPDE days and just having a good time with them. So I want you to go take a look at them and make sure you give them a follow on all their socials. It's whooshautomotive.com, Whoosh Automotive on all the socials. Go check them out.
But we're about to say you don't need magnesium wheels because it doesn't make that much difference in lap time. So but I love magnesium wheels. Like, they're just so cool.
Yes, well done, Jager. For the Apex wheels at 20 pounds, which is actually quite good for 19 by 10, 20 pounds, you ran 1 minute 30, so a 30.13 second lap time. And then for the next size up, which was 38 pounds, right? So we're talking 18 pounds per wheel, right? So so that's what 62 pounds total overall added. It was only it was a little over 3/4 of a second, 0.79 seconds slower.
And I did that. Because I first tested that at the end of 24. Because I was like, I wanted the video at the end of 24 because I'd invested the money in it. And it was at the end of the season, and I did that session on a slightly different track, and I got to the end, I was like, I can't publish this. Like, people are going to think I just can't drive. Like, YouTube's obviously already like hateful enough at the best of times, but like, if I publish this saying adding 18-pound a wheel is barely a second, people are going to be, what is this guy on about? So I modified my car. I put MCS three-way remotes on it. I did some other bits to it, and then I ran it again twice more and got the same result.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's fascinating just because I agree. I mean, it's just from a standpoint of, the difference between, I'm like, all right, well, I could go flow formed or I could go forged, and forged is going to get me 3 pounds lighter per wheel. So that's going to be worth something, right?
Look at the anguish on Jonathan's face right now.
I know.
Because
we're stressing him out.
I'm going to ruin that thought as well. I was having this conversation with an engineer at Pirelli. I was testing in Italy with Pirelli, one of their circuits, and then someone was running an OE program for a vehicle manufacturer. I won't name the vehicle manufacturer. It was a high performance vehicle manufacturer. And they looked like they're having a bad day testing. I was like, what's going on? He's like, oh, it's happened again. I'm like, what's happened again? He said, so when you're doing this OE program, as I touched upon earlier, you have to get the manufacturer sign off. So their test driver will come and test the tire and vehicle combination on the mule and be like, yeah, this tire is what we want. This is good. And what Pirelli and other tire manufacturers have found is, so when you're testing, you have a test wheel on, same dimensions, same size, same specs, but different design. And then when the car is ready for full production and selling, they put what they call the marketing wheels on, which are the pretty wheels the car will be sold with. Again, same size, same material, same width, everything like that. And what tire manufacturers are finding is, when they move from the development wheel to the marketing wheel, the final wheel, like the tire performance in their analysis can drop by a point. And a point doesn't sound like a lot, but a point in tire testing is like, it goes from good to almost not acceptable. SEA standard kind of like 1 to 10 scale, everything's around a 7, dropping a point. And what they've found is, so I had from discussions with Apex, so I've been talking about making a video with Apex, which will hopefully happen, about wheels bending. So you can have a 19 by 10 ET25, 20 pounds, but you can have fairly significant subjective driving characteristics just by the wheel bending under cornering. Like, you're adding camber to your vehicle with the wheel flexing. So that's one big thing. But the other thing I didn't know about, and the tire companies have found, is the apex area of the wheel, so where the wheel and the bead meet, how that's designed has a significant impact on the tire's subjective characteristic, how much it feels like it's rolling off the rim, how your steering reactions are, how the balance are, and even tiny little things like whether the inside, I don't know if you've ever looked inside the inside of a lip of an Apex wheel. They're Motorsport wheels, they're not painted, and they have like little serrations on, which helps the bead stay solid. Things like that can really change the performance of a tire. So these OE tire manufacturers are finding, as they move from wheel A to wheel B, even with the same specs, probably a similar weight, the flex and the bead area of the wheel is having a significant impact on the tire's performance. So your analogy of like, well, if it's only £2 between a flow form and a forged wheel, I might as well get the flow formed. Yes, in terms of raw weight, it doesn't make a huge difference, but you might be like doubling up on differences or tripling up based on how much the wheel's flexing under cornering and how like the bead area is interacting with the tire. So wheels are almost as complicated as tires, I found out last year, and it's something I need to make more content on.
Yes, that only helps with your testing.
Yeah, just everything's confusing. Everything's confusing.
We're supposed to be moving the opposite direction.
Yeah, but I was getting
making more sense.
Yeah, now people are going to have to think about what wheels they get. So wheel stiffness is a big thing. So I've seen some data. I won't go into brands, but I've seen some data like Apex. I know engineer their wheels to not flex. They do the bespoke design. They put extra material where they need to get a stiff wheel, which is really important in motorsport. And then you could send that wheel off to China and be like, can you make this wheel exactly the same in your own forging methods? And it will come back and it would probably feel significantly different because of how much it flexes. So there is more to a wheel than it is, even more to a wheel if it's forged, like the quality of the forge and the quality of the design does have a big impact too. So yeah, that's something else to think about in time attack if you want to find that extra 0.2 of a second. Maybe just a different wheel will give it to you. Same tire.
It is wild, the things that we can do. And I will say this. So one thing, Jonathan, to always remember about time attack is if you can't find that 10th in tires, in wheels, in brakes, one thing that we know and love in time attack that'll always solve the problem, horsepower. That will always solve the problem.
Yeah.
1,000 plus, always beneficial.
Time attack sounds expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, when I think back to, like, and maybe it's there, but maybe when I look at it, or when I'm looking at wheels, I haven't been looking for it, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people publish the wheel stiffness, or anything like that. And it may be because it's not standardized. So you look at one and you look at another, and there's no real way to determine that. But from your experience, how can we as enthusiasts sort of try and find wheels that are
I have no idea.
That's a $1 million question.
Yeah.
All right, $1 million question. Yeah.
So
okay.
My personal advice, based on limited data I know, like the motorsport wheel manufacturers generally do a better job than the fashion wheels. So again, I'm not basing this based on data. This is purely an analogy. But someone like Rotiform, who make a very pretty wheel, might not have a stiffer wheel as someone like BBS or Braid or someone like that, who are known for making like rally wheels and motorsport wheels. I know Apex have tried to bridge the gap between like a cost-effective wheel and a stiff wheel, from chatting with Apex and seeing some of the data they've done in their testing. But I'm pretty sure like some of the SAE load rating, is it SAE, your load rating on your wheel? I'm pretty sure, like with some of the stamps in tires, there's almost no policing. So again, these Chinese manufacturers can put almost any. I say I'm focusing on Chinese manufacturers. That's probably unfair. There's some good ones out there, I'm sure, but like a factory that just wants to get a cheap wheel out and make as much profit as possible can just stamp whatever they want on the side, and no one's checking it. And that's obviously a very dangerous situation too, because they're assuming in software simulation that the wheel is. Hopefully they're testing it in software to see if it's meeting the load rating, but in practice they're not putting them on machines and bending them and cracking them. Like the big companies are. So unfortunately, like with tires, it's often the case, if you're spending the money, you're getting a better product.
I mean, and as I'm going to kind of jump into a weird direction here, as you just mentioned, one of the things that probably stands out to most of our users is when we started talking about 220, 260, when we start talking treadwear as a whole, that is a hilarious concept to me all within itself, because when you say a 200 treadwear tire, the variety from a Hoosier Time Attack Pro to name the other, 200 Time Attack or 200 treadwear tire that isn't that super 200, is such a wide variety in what we call a 200 treadwear. And I'm going to ask you this, Jonathan. Do you have do you have a great understanding of the treadwear rating system and how that goes about, so that we could convey that to the viewers?
I think my understanding is gospel for sure. Like Europe doesn't deal with treadwear, so it's something I've known about, but now I'm living it here. It's something I've tried to bring myself up to speed as much as possible. Treadwear is a test that tries to give some sort of indication on how long the tire will last. The disadvantage of treadwear markings is you're allowed to put a lesser treadwear on your tire should you want to, for whatever reason. And as far as I'm understanding, most of the 200s could legally be stamped well above 200. They could be stamped 250, 300. Not all of them, I'm sure, but they could legally be stamped higher. But they want that 200 on the sidewall because that's what gets them into the most popular motorsport classes. Like the supercar. I was actually having a chat with someone who's more knowledgeable about this than me and is a big fan of the Goodyear Supercar 3, which is a 220, I think. And we both came to the conclusion if they'd stamped the sidewall of that tire as a 200 instead of a 220 when it first came out, they'd have sold buckets of them because it was an amazing tire. But for whatever reason, their marketing team didn't realize the importance of the 200 significance. So, the whole Treadwear thing is, it's not a lie because it is a standardized test that is government controlled and should be at least a little bit policed. I know in tires in Europe, we have the EU tire label, which gives you rolling resistance, wet grip, and noise as standardized tests. So they kind of self-police, the premium manufacturers self-police each other. And I'm sure that's going on a little bit. I know when Hoosier releases Track Attack Pro, Bridgestone, Michelin, whoever are buying sets to test them themselves. So that's definitely going on. But I know a lot of the 200s and above would quite easily be stamped with a high, as in a 300, maybe not a 400, but like I'm sure some of them would pass a 300 standard, but they have a 200 on the sidewall to be in that category. And likewise, like you say, if you have to break down the 200 category into super tweenies, as Grassroots Motorsport calls them, and endurance 200s, when the endurance 200 will get you maybe 200 laps on track and a super 200 might get you 20, like, there's something not quite right with this stamp that says Treadwear on it being entirely accurate.
So that, I think that's as good as explanation as I've ever heard of how that goes, because it is definitely a very vast. It is very vast in the ability to put all of these tires in there. So obviously we've been talking for about an hour and 40 minutes now, and so I want to jump into the 60 to 100 Treadwear. I want to get your impressions on these tires and what are some of the, and again, just talking about this we talked a little bit about the Goodyear Supercar 3Rs, the Michelin Pilot Sport 2Rs, the Pirelli P0s, Trofeo Rs.
Trofeo RS now.
Yeah. And then we have some of the, as we just talked about, we have like the subprime with like the Nankei R1s, the NTO1, which I still can't believe there's not a successor to that tire. And then like a Maxxis RC1. I could be missing quite a few. I don't keep up with this category all that well. But in your experience, throw some out there, throw us some impressions, and give us some insights in this category.
So this segment hopefully shouldn't take as long, because there's less tires and less controversy. I don't want to put words in the mouth of people like Andy at Grassroots and TJ at Tyre Rack, but I do chat about tires a lot with them. We are like the three professional tire testers in the US.
No air quotes. That's a real thing.
So we tend to it's just us three. So we try and swap ideas as much as possible. And the general consensus, myself included, is in that category. The Goodyear Supercar 3R is probably the best tire, both in terms of outright pace and subjective characteristics. It's just a really, really nice tire to drive. Like, it seems to do everything well. It's a really gorgeous tire. Obviously, again, caveats with vehicle application and driving style. The Cup 2R, for my driving style and the vehicles I've run it on, I don't really like the wear performance of it, and the heat performance of it. Like I say, I think originally, maybe not so much anymore, it was designed to do a really fast lap at the Nürburgring, and which isn't actually that punishing on tires, because there's lots of straight sections for the tires to cool down, and the mu level at the Nürburgring is nowhere near as high as some of the street circuits you'll find around the world. So you just less energy going into the tires because you've got less grip from the asphalt. And the most recent test, which hasn't been published yet, sadly I didn't have the Supercar 3R in, but I did have the Cup 2R and the new Pirelli P0 Trofeo RS. That is a very good tire, apart from in Mustang Dark Horse OE application, apparently, because that tire doesn't seem to be brilliant or much that loved by the Dark Horse people. But the Trofeo RS,
Ford tested anything, I swear to God.
Yeah. The Trofeo RS was born out of Pirelli's WRC involvement, a World Rally Championship. I don't know if you know a whole lot about WRC, but for me, the World Rally Championship is probably like the ultimate test of car and driver, because it's so varied and so many different surfaces, and they have to do X amount of miles on them, blah, blah, blah. So I think in my own test anyway, the Trofeo RS was a very fast and very stable tire. So I think as it's very, very limited sizes at the moment. I know there's some 3RS sizes. It's OE on the 3RS. And I think there's like a 235, 3519, because that's the size I tested, maybe not in the States yet. But as sizes of that roll out, I think people will start enjoying that tire too. I think Pirelli have done a really good job with that one.
Yeah, it does suck in the sense that like some of these tires, it's like I've definitely been in the situation like, oh God, I want to try this tire. And then it's like, oh, can't. They don't make sizes.
Yeah.
And I know for consumers, for us in Time Attack, that's probably been in that 60 to 100 treadwear rating. That's been probably the biggest thing. I know friends of mine with their GT3s and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I want this. Oh, I can't find the tires. I can't get these tires. And you know, Kilgore's probably been in the same situation in the BMW realm. It's like, dude, why I can't get these tires? So I don't know. It is frustrating in that sense, and I wish that I understand like everything else, and I don't understand at the same time. But to create a mold for a tire at a specific size, I assume that's very expensive and time consuming, and that's why it takes so long for them to come out with different tires. And they have to decide how many of these can we actually sell.
Yeah. Like tens and tens of thousands of dollars to make a mold. And then it's not even, I don't want to waste too much time talking about the industrialization of tires and how difficult they are to manufacture, but every size you make, you have to find space for in a factory. And it's not so much, it's not like, oh, I want to make this size, let's get a mold and squirt a load of rubber in. Like machines have to be adapted. Like you have to lay different compounds, different tread patterns, different belting, different widths of rubber strips and stuff like that. Like it's tires are impossibly complex, even to make. So yeah, it is a big cost for a tire manufacturer to put more sizes on. Obviously, every tire manufacturer would make every tire size possible if they could, because it's just good business. If it wasn't like a big expensive thing to do, but it is a big expensive thing to do, so they have to pick and choose. And then tires like the new Trofeo RS, you start with your Halo products. Like so, you get homologated by Porsche GT, like on a GT3 RS, which is like the hardest homologation to get for any tire that I'm aware of. So once you've got that, you've kind of proven that it's a solid tire, and then you get that trickle down economy. You see, someone sees, oh, there's a GT3 RS going around my track, flying. What tires it's on? Oh, it's on a Trofeo RS. So let's have a look. Okay.
Yeah. I guess sort of to that point, and I'm going to give my impression here, and Jonathan, you can correct me if I'm right or wrong. But exactly to your point, where I guess I've always sort of assumed, and I don't know why, I don't know where it really came from, other than where it did come from is hearing people talk about the Sport Cup 2Rs or the Trofeo R or the Trofeo RS. I've always associated those as being developed more for specific OE cars.
Yeah.
And that I then assumed, rightly or wrongly, or maybe it was just from sort of hearing grumblings in the paddock, that you could get that and maybe they have certain tires, but that doesn't necessarily, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about early on when we first started, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the best application for a totally different, right, a Mustang or a Chevrolet Camaro or Corvette or, some JDM car, right, an Acura NSX. And so I guess I've always associated the Trofeo RS as well as the Sport Cup 2R as the higher end track car / supercar / hypercar made for those, and they don't always work too well on us normal, normies who have, just sort of regular track cars. Yeah. and right, I don't know, that's just sort of been my opinion, and you can kind of tell me if I'm right or wrong, or if it's not totally relevant.
Yeah, it goes back to what we almost started with, and that's something like the Cup 2R is almost exclusively OE design tires. So they have a base tire. This is the Cup 2R, but then they're all modified to meet a certain vehicle's goals. So yeah, in early days of things like the Cup 2R or now the Trofeo RS, you can buy like maybe 4 sizes of it, and they're designed heavily for a very interesting vehicle layout, and that's the engine in the wrong place right at the very back because it's a GT3 RS. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a 3RS. I wish I didn't, but they are great cars, but that engine placement is not the right place. So then they're bolting 2 front tires on their M4, or 2 sets of front, so like fronts all round from a 3RS, and wondering why the tire doesn't perform quite properly. Or maybe Like a 3RS is, I don't know, in pounds, what, 2,200 pounds wet or something, 2,400 pound. So like the front tire doesn't need to take that much energy. So it's designed to warm up quickly on that vehicle. And maybe they're sticking it on a 4,000 pound M3 and destroying it super quickly. So like I said, the trickle down into aftermarket does work. But these premium manufacturers, they don't compromise on things like, I guess it depends on the application, but they won't want to hugely compromise on like cold weather performance if it's a tire that's going to be used on the street a lot. So like the Cup 2R is going to be okay when it's 40 degrees outside and slightly damp. But like I say, these specific 200 tires, which I know a 200 is meant to be streetable, but generally they're pretty awful on the street when they're cold. They can really focus on doing one thing, and that's that one thing of getting around a lap really fast when it's hot.
Yeah.
So I have to ask this because I do hear this quite often, where people will say it's, and this we hear this at like Button Willow per se. They'll say, "Oh man, temperature is like, let's just say 35 to 40 degrees outside." And they're like, "Man, it's just too cold. The tires are not going to light up." And I think you mentioned it earlier in the show where you're like, maybe you just don't know how to heat the tire up to get the performance out of it. But have you ever, in your experience, have you gotten in those situations where it's like, yeah, I just can't get this tire going?
No, I haven't. No, but then I wouldn't like I'm not going out and testing in December in Utah where it's going to be a peak of 40 degrees. I'm sure if I did run a Miata on a Nankang CRS when it's 35 degrees ambient and there's not much energy in the surface, I would not be able to switch it on whatever I did, just because that's a tire that perhaps needs a little bit of heat to get going. But yeah, for my professional life, I wouldn't do that, because not only because it's perhaps not the best way of testing, it's not representative of how these people are using like a 200 tire. You're not, I'm assuming Time Attack doesn't run through the winter when it's raining. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're all in California where it never gets cold, but I know Motorsport kind of shuts down here over the winter.
Yeah, our finale in California happens beginning of November, and it can be this year was incredibly warm, so it was very warm, but like I have seen it where it is literally like, I don't know, 35 degrees on that, like maybe even 40 degrees on that first session. And people look at it as like, oh, this is boost weather, this is like horsepower weather, this is going to be
Yeah.
great. And I've seen it happen where that first session out, and you mentioned it at the very beginning of the show, where you said, yeah, going out there for the very first the 30 minutes, I'm essentially cleaning off the track and getting the track to get temperature into it. And what I've seen as well is that same sentiment of like that whole the first session out isn't fast, but the second session out is actually the money session. Track gets clean, the tires get a little bit warmer, the track gets a little bit warmer, and now all of a sudden people are able to go and lay down the really fast lap times. And so very interesting in that sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, if you were running some sort of like running average of all your sessions in Time Attack, so your first session counted and you had free tire choice, it might even be smarter to go out in these very cold conditions on a street tire like a Pilot Sport 4S or Continental Extreme Contact Sport 02, that you know will switch on at 35 degrees ambient. But as I'm assuming you're not running like a running average of all your times, it's just your fastest lap from whatever session is your money lap. Yeah, I would use those cold morning sessions just to shake down the car, remind myself which turns were left, which were right, and just make sure everything is like, just get some heat into the tire a little bit without like over bullying it into getting too hot, or like graining the surface by sliding around too much when it's cold. Yeah, just use that as like the warm-up session. Maybe even if you've got multiple sets of wheels, throw on an old set of wheels and tires just to remind yourself of where you're going.
And that's what I've generally told people essentially is sometimes, depending on temperature, depending on conditions, you're better off to use the practice day set for that first session of the day. In this year's competition for this Button Willow event that we were talking about, it was much warmer than usual. So that first session was money. Like it was like, if you got the first session in, if you screwed your first session up, you still have a chance in the second session. But by the time we got to the third and the fourth session, you were talking about such a delta. It blew people out of the water. It was rough.
That's where like experience, especially at the circuit, comes in, because it's not just your first session. If you've put on a set of stickers to really go for it, it's basically your second and third lap. So that's where experience of where you are and just being confident to get up to speed very, very quickly really pays off.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And I can't stress it enough, as you just said, right? Like, so in your testing, just throwing it out there, how often are the tires in any of these categories? Is it a situation where it's like the first, like you warmed up the tires, because you said you like to do the like a 4 lap. Which one of those laps generally tended to be the fastest? Did it literally fastest on the first and then it trailed, or?
So for everything below, as in slower than a 200, it's your first lap without, unless you make a mistake, which you shouldn't do as a tire tester. That's what we've been trained not to do. It's your first lap, and that's not with a warm-up routine. That's out lap, and then your first lap is without that your fastest, and then your times are dropping half a second a lap maybe for 3 or 4. Generally, I'm always quickest on my first, unless I haven't done a good job of warming them up properly, and then it might be the second. But for all this, what you would classify as a Super 200, so an RE71 RS or a P1, well, unless I've overheated the P1 warming it up, it would be the first flying lap is the fastest I'll get. And that would be the fastest I'll ever go on that tire if I've done my job properly. Because even if I let them cool down and go back out again, there is a sticker advantage on almost every tire, for sure.
And then, so what you're saying is that if someone is setting consistent laps, lap 1, lap 2, lap 3, or even lap 1 and 2 are the same, very like within 1,000th, they're not driving fast enough on their first lap. That's what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing.
On a 200, if they're doing like, I guess a 200, you can get a few laps exactly the same time from even a Super 200, and definitely an Endurance 200. But if you're on a street tire, you are definitely not driving fast enough if your second lap's as quick as your first lap.
Yeah. So you heard it here first, guys. If you're driving consistent lap times with a Super 200, Jonathan said you need.
Exactly.
I mean, everyone knows like an RE71 RS is you've got your first 2 laps are like the money laps, and then you can cool it off between sessions and maybe get it back, especially if you scrub the tire in a lot. But if you've got the money and you want that ultimate lap time, you find the track when it's not dirty. So like you've got to plan this in your head. You don't want the track dirty. So maybe the very end of the first session, if the day's going to get really hot really quick, bolt on your stickers, get them warm, and then go for that 1 lap at the very end of the session. Hope you don't get traffic, and that should be your fastest lap you'll run that day.
Look at that. Jonathan throwing out the time attack strategy tip of the day. Man.
I need to write that down.
Yeah, I've never run time attack. So I'm very sorry for all the people I've offended. But that's.
Well, Jonathan, I'm going to tell you right now, man. We talk a lot about like time attack strategy on the show because a lot of stuff that I've seen over the last few years in particular, people don't seem to be putting a strategy together. It seems to be like, I just go out and I do as many laps as I possibly can in a 20-minute session. And as me and Kilgore have talked about consistently, that is not how you get a fast lap time. That is, I cannot comprehend when I watch these guys out there and they're just doing lap after lap after lap after lap. And again, we're trying to get the fastest 1 lap pace. And again, like you said, Vitor P1, we got guys on Vitor P1s and they're going out there and they're doing 3 consecutive hot laps. And we're going, how are you going to go faster on your second and third hot lap? It just doesn't make sense. And that's where I would love, and I know you don't you don't do this in your tire testing, but to me, like I want to see you do some time attack tire testing where you do something where you say, hey, I'm going to go do my warm up. I'm going to do a hot lap and then 2 more hot laps. What does those lap time deltas look like? And then I'm going to go out and do a warm up, a hot lap, a cool down, and then a hot lap and see what that nets me to see, hey, is that allowing me to get closer to my fastest lap? Because I look at this stuff as, okay, if I'm going to go for a second lap, a second fastest lap ever, it's because A, I got blocked, B, I screwed up corners, or C, like I didn't do a good job, so I need to do it again. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I will make a note of that, and I'll add it to my testing where possible.
Yeah.
Like I say, cost
All right.
is the big prohibitive thing, cost and time, because time is cost when you're renting tracks. They get pretty expensive.
Yeah.
One thing, my local track, they have a members club now. They're trying to be thermal, I guess, where you get
everybody
more.
is.
Yeah. I mean, thermal's a world of its own that's probably not going to be replicated anytime soon with the value that you have to pay to buy into thermal. It's just insane money. But as a member here, I do get access to very regular, very lightly subscribed currently track days where I can run more interesting tests because I'm not renting the track by the hour. I've got 4 or 5 hours of track time that I can do what I like with. So that I things like that I'll definitely like loop into these tests next year. I know I'll be testing the RZ. I've got a set on the way of the RZ. They're not here yet, so I'm not going to be able to test those until I guess March.
That's the new Bridgestone.
Yeah,
the new Bridgestone.
the new Bridgestone. I have more sets of the Nankang to test. I really like the CRS, so I'm going to throw those in the test. I'll throw the Track Attack Pro in. I'll throw the new Toyo in. I'll do a bit of a test, and I'll try and answer that question regards to endurance pace and like how to manage the tire as best as possible. But again, I keep on saying it. Andy from Grassroots Motorsport, he is the man for doing this because he has a lot more time on track than I have access to for this category of tire.
Yeah, I would absolutely love the construct of, because I look at this like in this fashion is most time attack guys are very budget constrained, right? So we're not buying, like it kind of goes back to what Kilgore said. Usually it's like I got one set of tires for Saturday, and a lot of times that's the used set of tires that I ran at the last track event from Sunday. So they literally have a whole day of different heat cycles on them. They bolt them on for a Saturday, then they have a new set of tires for Sunday. So keep that in your thought process as you go, where you don't need a new set of tires, and it doesn't even need to be low heat cycles from a sense of like, people are bolting these tires on and expecting fastest laps possible with 5, 6, 7 heat cycles on them. And they're throwing them on, and then they're trying to go do a lap, 2 laps, maybe even 3 laps in a row before doing a cool, that kind of construct. And that would tell the time attack community a lot about the tires. And I know that's just a hope and a dream. That's just me passing information on to you about what the time attack community in the US is interested in and how we look at tires.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind for the next test. I want to do the best job I possibly can for the most amount of people, and without buying all the cars and all the tire sizes and all the wheels in the world. I just have to work within what I can do, and having cool down laps mid-session is certainly an interesting factor.
Yeah. I just have to imagine Jonathan has a huge storage unit full of tires and wheels.
I have a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jonathan, what for 2026, or I guess maybe even things that you have already tested, but you are planning to release in 2026, what are you looking forward to? What are some of the top, 2 or 3 or 4 things that you're going to be doing this year that you're hoping to release?
Yeah, like I said, I think the RZ test, my next 200 test, is probably the most exciting thing for you guys, for time attackers. So I think that RZ Bridgestone, they've done like a virtual release of it to just a few people to talk about what the tire brings, and I am probably shouting more about thermal capacity than anyone else. And the good news is the RZ brings both a small improvement in that time. I think it was about half a second. Or 0.7 of a second round to, I'm going to butcher the name, Tabuska, the Japanese shorts.
It's Cuba.
That place. But it's only like a minute lap, isn't it? So 3/4 of a second is...
That is a significant time.
Although in the small print, it's the average of 2 laps. So what that's telling me is, in theory, I'm sure it's not, but in theory, the first lap could be slower than the RS, but then the second lap is significantly faster. but I'm sure, like, I'm trust
Sure.
Bridgestone to have improved its 1 lap pace as well. And then I think the other thing that's really exciting, I don't know whether you guys dip into this, but the Hoosier Track Attack race has just been announced with the R8 and the A8, so the R7 and A7 replacement. And I'm looking
About
to
time.
Which
I-
Jager just said that. I was about to say, Jager mentioned that, like, it has been a long time coming since those have at least updated as far as we know as a public update.
Yes,
right?
No, it has. And I think part of that has been they've been at the front. I mean, the A7 is the fastest street legal tire you can buy effectively. And the R7 is a very fast tire for its segment. They haven't really had any competition. The Pirelli P0 Trofeo Track being released, which is a rival to those two tires, I think maybe gave them the push they need to release the new tires. So I trust Hoosier have done a really good job. Like you said, they've had a long time to develop and perfect the new compound they're using in these 2 new tires. So I expect those to be very fast as well. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to get back to thermal on that GT4, because that would be a nice car to test that on against the Pirelli and anything else. Maybe there's a Toyo in that segment I'd like to try as well.
By the way, I didn't know until watching your videos. When I looked, I always thought of the Hoosier as a slick. Like, I'm just like, it's a slick tire, it's a slick. And then I was watching your video and I'm like, street legal? What's this guy talking about? This guy's, again, I was the guy on the internet. What is he talking about?
That was you in the comments. Yeah, okay.
Actually looked into it and I'm like, oh, he's right. Like,
it's like Treadwear, but worse. It's technically legal, DOT legal, because it has that circumferential groove.
It's got the groove.
It's got the groove. It's actually interesting that, so they all have not for street use stamped on the sidewall in big letters, which is, it's DOT, so it is legal, but I guess the lawyers want that on the sidewall. I believe some of the tire manufacturers, now let me get this right, I think some of the tire, no, wait, hold on, maybe I found out recently some of the 200 manufacturers are stamping not for street use on the sidewall as well. Maybe that's a legal thing as well. But yeah, I think technically they are, the A7, R7, they are street legal, but you probably end up in an interesting argument with the traffic officer if you got stopped for them. Especially on the sidewall, it says not for street use.
Yeah, I have heard some interesting little tidbits where certain tire manufacturers are avoiding some dumping fees by putting not for street use on them, and then allows them to skirt some things. So I have heard some whispers of stuff like that. Where,
I know it was the Hankook, the RS4, the Ventus RS4, which is their Endurance 200. I think that's had the DOT stamp removed.
Yes, and if they don't have DOT stamp, they'll say not for street use.
Yes, yeah. And then they're
interesting.
But then they've was it Time Attack it happened in, or SCCA? Some people got kicked out of the race afterwards because the tire didn't have a DOT up. They found out in scrutineering. Like Hankook quietly changed it, and then people were fitting new tires without, like, you don't stare at the sidewall every time you fit a tire, and then it got caught in post-event scrutineering. They got kicked out.
I don't know what happened.
Just looking at like tread pattern, right? Like, if you went out, if I looked at a car and go, oh, it's in street class, it should have a 200 Treadwear, and it's got a friggin' Hankook tread pattern, and I came back and I saw it next and it had slicks on it, I'm going, oh, wait a second. Yeah. But beyond that, I mean, for the most part, you're just looking to make sure they're still on street tires with treads. Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't even know what half the stuff on the sidewall means anyway. Not that I'm looking.
I mean, a tire size is metric, imperial, and percentage based. So, like, it's millimeters wide, percentage of width is sidewall height, and then inches for the wheel size. So who knows what's going on, man?
I tried to put different tires on my Mustang, and then one set will fit, the other one doesn't fit. These ones are too small, and I hate it. It sucks.
But there's a legal variance within, like, a 275. There's it doesn't have to be exactly 275 wide, 275 millimeters wide. There's like a, I don't know, plus minus 5% or 5 millimeters either side. I'm not entirely sure. So that means you can, like you say, you can have a narrow 275 or a wide 275. And if you're really pushing it with like your suspension cup with clearance, if by putting the wrong 275 on, you've all of a sudden you're rubbing when you weren't before. So that's another thing to keep in mind, I guess.
Yep.
Been there, let me tell you.
Yeah. We're just a little over 2 hours into this, but I do want to ask this just because I don't know many other people that have had this opportunity. This is going to be more of a BMW specific question. What is it like driving different? What's the difference between driving your F80 M3 versus the G82 GT4 down at Thermal? I mean, how much fun is that car?
Yeah, well, I actually even better. I drove a G80 Street M3 and then the GT4 in the same day. Like if you're not, I guess if you're not used to race cars, they're quite intimidating, the G series. Like inside, I don't know if you've seen the inside of a GT. It's a proper race car. You got your Fanatec wheel, your adjustable pedal box, your massive air conditioned fixed seat. It really is your Motec. It's a huge event inside, and even though it's got the ZF8 slush box, like it doesn't feel, I mean, it does a little bit, but you'd be hard pressed to like put an amateur in the car and be like, is this a proper dual clutch gearbox or is this a ZF? And the noise is intense. The power, they're running them we run them in wet mode there. So you're a little bit down on power compared to the street car. But like, it comes across as intimidating until you start driving it. And then it's so friendly and easy to drive. It's just an incredibly set up machine. The amount, you don't have assisted brakes, so the amount of feel you get through the brakes, you can just 12 brake so deep into the corner. The balance is amazing. Even with everything off, the car's friendly. The steering reaction is insane. I think the biggest thing you notice is the weight. And how stiff obviously the car is with I think it's Olhins on those, or maybe it's KWs. But the weight, the mass of the GT4 versus the street car is significantly different, and you feel that everywhere.
Sure. Have they, I guess I would have thought that, again, we've talked about cars being tuned to specific tires. I would have thought that car would have been, that the GT4 cars would have been tuned with the suspension to slicks, and that maybe putting 200s or treaded kind of tires on them may not necessarily be best for them, but do you still get a pretty good feel?
Yeah. I mean, the benefit of that car is you do get excellent feel compared to a street car. It's designed to be a race car, and it's designed to give as much detail as possible to the driver. You're right. It probably is set up. It's sprung for a slick, like a hard slick sidewall. But yeah, a 200 is more than capable on that category of car. And it's a lot of fun. If anything, I did use the Hoosier slick on it, the medium. And if anything, the R7 was a little bit more fun just because it's a little bit more forgiving at the limit. But then something like an R7 isn't a million of miles away from a slick tire with a groove cut in it, is it? So you're talking very small differences, but yeah, certainly what looks like an intimidating driving experience with all the aero, it's very, very friendly and easy to drive. And like you can go to Thermal, to the driving school and pay to drive one of those cars. So if you ever have the opportunity to, I'd certainly recommend it. Yeah, they're awesome machines, especially if you're into BMWs.
For sure.
Oh man. Well, Jonathan, I can't say that we cleared anything up to degree.
I've made everything so much worse. I'm sorry. It's so much worse.
I do think that people can come out of this show with a little bit better of a thought about how they might approach, how they might purchase, and how they might test different tires. And maybe, just maybe, they're going to approach each person who says, I like X tire on my car, and maybe they'll have a little bit more of a conscious thought to say, well, maybe that's because, and it can be a plethora of different answers at that juncture.
Exactly.
But it is what, at the end of the day, it is the variety of the world that makes this so entertaining and so awesome. And I can say, we definitely think that certain tires are great, and there's different ways to make them all great, and try them all, and that'll be the best way to figure out which ones you like the best, and it'll be a good time doing it.
Yeah, certainly. I think next year is going to be interesting for the 200s. Like I said, the RZ, the new Toyo, what we decided what that was called, and I've forgotten now. Proxys Sport R or something.
They need to get a better name. That's what you decided.
Yeah. That has potential to be a very interesting tire in the segment. And I'm sure there's some other tires that are going to appear over the next year that will be interesting in various segments, like the A8 and R8. But yeah, tires are constantly evolving, and if nothing else, go and see what the fast guy's got on his car and have a chat with him about why he likes them. Not just the fact he likes them, like why he likes them and why he's using them. Like, it might be that's the only set of tires he's ever used and he's the fastest guy there. Doesn't mean it's the fastest tire. He could just be naturally gifted, or he could have the fastest balance of performance or whatever category you're in. So yeah, just keep trying tires. It's fun, if nothing else.
Yeah. Or you can watch Jonathan's YouTube channel, or go to his website, Tyre Reviews, and get his input. I will notice this. I was just looking. You are right. Toyo Proxys Sport R. I just saw they have fitments from 13-inch wheel diameters up to 21. So Jager, to your point, there's obviously some sort of market for their 13-inch wheels.
They're going to be
don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yes, don't know what it is, but clearly they've got a reason to do that. So yeah, for Jonathan, obviously Tyre Reviews on YouTube, your webpage, Tyre Reviews. You've also got Instagram at Tyre Reviews. Any other ways that people can keep up with you or see what you got going on?
I mean, there's a small Discord server. There's a subreddit on Reddit. There's Facebook, but generally I'm most active on the YouTube comments, or you can contact me through the website. I'd like to give another shout out to Tyre Rack and Grassroots Motorsport. They are doing Grassroots. Obviously, Andy's always been the man in this segment. He's far more knowledgeable than I am for this kind of stuff. So if you can get him on the podcast, definitely do. He does some excellent and consistent tests, and Tyre Rack have really stepped up their testing recently. So check those out too, and try and, like, if all three of us are saying a tire's good, it's probably worth investigating. That, it should be okay.
I just want to say, I want all of our Time Attack brethren out there to go out and maybe give a comment of positivity on the YouTube of Tyre Reviews. Maybe say thank you for taking the time and energy to go test all these tires, even if you don't quite agree with exactly the sentiment that Jonathan puts out. Give him some words of encouragement. Maybe tell him to go have some fun laps where he just gets to have a good time.
What would actually be useful is leaving reviews of what they found on the website, because the website gets a lot of traffic from people thanks to its good positioning in Google. So if you really like an R888R for some reason, go and leave a review. Or if you've found the Track Attack Pro really slow, go to the website and let other people know. And that really helps with, like, the averaging and themes across multiple reviews. You can do statistical analysis on natural language now, thanks to AI and large language models. And the more reviews I have on the website, the better it is for everyone, and the bigger picture it is.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, I definitely feel like maybe at the beginning of this year in 2026, once you, Jonathan, and Andy, and maybe some of the guys from Tyre Rack have been able to get their hands on the 2026 tires, we might need to have you all three on here, and we'll figure out we'll figure out what people need to do for the upcoming year. But Jonathan, thank you for coming on. For all the listeners and viewers out there, you can follow us on Instagram at Perfect Lap Podcast. You can check out our website, perfectlappodcast.com, and you can email the show if you have any comments, or if you want some particular content for us to make, or maybe you want you want us to get someone on the show for you. We are always looking for people to have on the show, talk to them, learn about why they love Time Attack, what cars they drive, etc. So you can email the show at maximumattack@perfectlappodcast.com. So as always, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Jonathan from Tyre Reviews. For all you time attackers out there, keep pushing, go fast, take chances. We'll see you in the next one.